again. No, I mean, it's okay. I can do the corrections, but you see, when we give these wrong scripts to our guests, it's. Please call her for me. Sweetheart, there are a few mistakes in the script. I can correct them, but I don't want us to give the wrong ones to our guests. So let me.
Newsfile is brought to you in association with MTN, Everywhere You Go, and Bank of Africa, as strong as a group, as close as a partner.
Hello, good morning. It's just past 9 a.m. this Saturday, the 3rd of November, 2012. My name is Kojo Oponkroma, and you're welcome to Newsfile on the Joy News channel on Multi TV and on Joy 99.7 FM in Accra and our affiliate stations across the country. Newsfile is produced by Sedem Ofori. It's directed by Yaya Abubakar, and we're pleased every Saturday morning when our team of cameramen, sound technicians, lighting technicians come in and join us with our guests as we bring you the best news analysis program on television and on radio. My name is Kojo Oponkroma and I'm your anchor. This Saturday morning, as we always do, we're happy to hear your thoughts when you send them on all the subjects that we are discussing. First of all, the IEA debates have started. It's an intellectual platform for our presidential candidates and the vice presidential candidates to engage in a battle of ideas, to exchange their thoughts while you hopefully take a decision on who to cast your vote for. But after the first debate, we want to find out what you make, what your assessment is of the performance of the candidates there. We want to talk about their composure, the kind of questions that were put to them, the kind of answers that they gave. And there were some specific interesting themes that were discussed: the National Development Planning Commission, education. These are areas that we'll be going into later this morning. We will also be finding out whether or not we should quickly cut to the chase and get to the point where we have the two leading candidates debate, or maybe we should open it up a bit more and bring in some of the other exciting candidates, Dr. Papakwesi Ndum of the PPP and a few other persons. When we are done with a review of the first IEA debate, we'll talk about the free SHS proposal this morning. Earlier this week, two persons very familiar with the subject of education had their say on education. Papa Oswankoma, former education minister, granted an interview in which he said, even though he's a member of the MPP, he thinks it will be tough to implement the free SHS program. Dr. Mensa Otabil, General Overseer of the ICGC and of the Central University, was also reported in the newspapers to have made some comments about free education. Those comments were made a few years ago in a sermon that he delivered, but are still relevant today. We would examine his thoughts, and we'll be asking whether these new considerations amount to a reality check or just a spanner in the works. And then finally this morning, I'm sure you are aware that the salary of the president, the vice president, ministers of state, deputy ministers of state, and members of parliament has been increased. We'll be asking, when we get into the new figures, is it too much considering the realities that people live with, or is it just enough for our nation's leaders? We'll love to hear your thoughts when you send them by text 1422 across networks, or you can put them on Facebook, facebook.com/joy997, or if you're following me on Twitter, my handle is KO Nkrumah. Newsfile is brought to you by MTN, everywhere you go, and the Bank of Africa, strong as a group and as close as a partner. We'll start off by playing back to you some of the interesting clips that lay a foundation for our conversation, and then I'll introduce my guest to you.
1992 Constitution mandates the National Development Planning Commission to advise the President on the development planning of the country, among other things. The criticism is that the weakness of the Commission is the reason for which every 4 years we seem to take a different turn. What would you do to make this Commission more effective? We'll start with you, Dr. Abu Sakara. 3 minutes.
First of all, according to the latest constitutional review, it was recommended that a national development plan be enshrined in the Constitution so that subsequent governments do not have the option of throwing away parts of it. We would review that plan and adopt it and accept it because we believe it is critical for us to have continuity from one successive administration to another. The other thing about the National Development Plan is to examine whether it fundamentally changes the structure of the economy. And this is the heart of this debate today. And I repeat, we cannot change the structure of this economy by pursuing macroeconomic policy with a monetary policy targeting single-digit inflation. There is no empirical evidence to support that. And many of the countries that have made it, to the contrary, have made it because they have spent their way through austerity. They have indeed invested in ensuring that their productive sectors are grown rapidly so that they have a high rate of return to bring money back for use in the services. This we must see in our National Development Plan. Secondly, we must ensure that our National Development Plan speaks to the issue of social justice by empowering women and the disabled so that they're able to make their contribution to our society. We must also establish a universal and socially funded healthcare system that will be accessible to all and maintain it in the National Development Plan. These are basic services that are rights, just as the right to education is, and we must enshrine that also. I am a product of free primary and secondary education. I went to Quenby Primary School free. I went to Yendi Secondary School free. And I believe many of my comrades would not be standing here today if a government had not prioritized education and the building of human capital as the essential ingredient of development. And that must be enshrined in the National Development Plan. Just as we must ensure that other sectors of the economy are balanced, taking into account where we stand today and where we want to be. Above all, we must have a process within the National Development Plan that holds political leaders and those in government accountable. And the substance of this debate today is indeed to hold those who have ruled over us over the last 29 years accountable for their stewardship and their performance in government. A National Development Plan and its monitoring and evaluation must speak to that and be able to inform the public without bias.
Your time is up, and Doc, please lift the microphone so that we can hear you better and speak directly into it when you address us. I have a follow-up question for you, so you'd answer that in 1 minute. Will enshrining the plan in the Constitution be enough to ensure that that plan is executed?
First and foremost, if it is enshrined in the Constitution, it is then understood that a fixed percentage of the budget will be spent on already planned and agreed projects. And without that being done, governments are free to leave parts of it. But when it is done, it will be necessary because the Minister of Finance will have to explain why allocations have not been made for the pursuit of certain projects. There will be less opportunity for judgment debts because there will be no cancellation of contracts.
I'll go to Mr. Hassan Ayaga to answer that question for me in 3 minutes. What would you do to make this commission more effective?
In our manifesto, we have outlined the long-term national development plan. And we believe that for a nation to develop, you must have a plan. If you do not have a plan, then you cannot be able to put up any good use of your economic and natural resources. For the first time, the PNC government will first of all finish the uncompleted buildings or projects left by past leaders or government. We will make sure that we make use of those resources to benefit the National Development Plan. The National Development Plan is a process where we believe that it must be drafted out of partisanship. Government, and including stakeholders, politicians, lawyers, engineers, and all other civil society should come up together as a group to be able to draft this plan so that one day nobody sits down and say that, look, it was drafted by the NDC, so it is not properly working, or it was drafted by the MPP. So we will make sure that it works, and we will decentralize the system whereby the plan will last for the next 20, 30 years. That is why we spoke about economic power separated from political power. When you separate the economic power from political power, it gives economists the opportunity to handle the economy without fear or favor that they'll be thrown out of government when another political party comes to power or when his party is not in power. We will make sure that businessmen, investors, students, government, and politicians will use the long-term national development policy to be able to do their businesses and think of what kind of business they will want to do for the next 20, 30 years. Students who are studying in universities and schools will use the long-term development plan to learn or to acquire skill acquisition, what kind of skills they would like to learn for their future career. Businessmen who wants to invest, if for instance we want to put up a train system or a trans system in Ghana, businessmen across the country will now come in with equipments that will help us to be able to bring out these issues and benefit the people of this country. Political power has so much influence, and we believe that if government must separate the economy and have good resources and human resources, then we must separate political power separately and have economic power. I believe that the government of this country has done so much, but when it comes to a new government, then we throw away the investors or the kind of investment we have done. Look around the country. You will see so many silos that have been abandoned by the previous administration of Dr. Hilal Imam and Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. This is Ghana's natural resources. This is Ghana's property. But we do not look at it because we believe that one must say that this is what I have done as a government. It is not what you have done as a government that matters. It is what we do for the nation and not what a political party has done for the people. We want to make sure that we make good good use of the natural resources, mineral resources, and the little reserve that we have to build this nation. Thank you.
Now, you're telling us what you want to do, but you say that you will bring all on board to draft and you will make sure it is implemented. What tools are you going to use to make sure it is implemented? Is it law or what? What are you going to use to make sure it's implemented?
The problem in Africa has something to do with implementations. We do put laws and we do put regulations, but they are not being abided. So we will use external and internal support. That is laws that must be obeyed. And then that laws must be a law that is irrespective of violence, the law that cannot cause violence. So we will look at regulations and possible means of implementing it. And when you default it, there's a penalty to that. And that I think we can do better than.
Thank you. I will go to the NPP's candidate, Nana Akufo-Addo, and ask the same question of you. What would you do to make this commission more effective in its work?
Thank you very much, Kojo. First of all, the Constitution in its wisdom has provided that every new government has 2 years to bring a plan. We are not going to wait 2 years, as the NDC did, to bring such a plan to Parliament. Because by the time, God willing, we win the election, the manifesto that we have put into place will be translated immediately into the plan. And that plan is going to do the following. First of all, we are not going to abandon any sensible initiatives that are already on the way. We will continue them. Secondly, we intend to use the oil revenues to promote a vigorous expansion of our education and of our healthcare system. We're not going to get involved in reckless borrowing. Debt is going to be contracted only for investments that can create jobs and add value to our national life. We are not going to go produce a plan at the end of which the record, that is the record of the NDC, growing unemployment, rising cost of living, falling standards in education, a collapsing healthcare, corruption, and more corruption. This is not going to be the way forward for Ghana under the NPP. We're going to pay great attention to the issue of structural transformation of our economy and making sure that, therefore, jobs, well-paying jobs, are made available to the youth, especially of our country. In so saying and doing, if the planning function is going to have real teeth, it needs the proper high-level political leadership. So I've already made the decision in my mind that if, God willing, I win in December, my vice president, an accomplished economist, one of the foremost economists and bankers in our country, Mahamadou Bawumia, who will then have become vice president, will head the National Development Planning Commission to give it that political leadership that is required if indeed the commission's activities are going to bear fruit for our nation. So, holistically, that's the position. A plan that is going to deal with the critical issues facing our country in education, in healthcare, in the creation of jobs, and in the transformation of our national economy, and an institution that is given the highest possible political leadership in our time.
A quick follow-up question to be answered within 1 minute. Is it to be our understanding that once the vice president chairs the NDPC, automatically successive governments will buy into whatever the NDPC has been doing?
You know, one of the difficulties about democratic politics is that it's difficult for you to bind successive governments because they will have their own mandate. That's why the Constitution, in its wisdom, has said that every time a government comes into office, it produces a plan for its term in office. So that's what you can do. And hopefully, if you are able to establish good practices, you're able to show people that the methods that you have used and the way you are going about things is going to produce results, then there's every good sense from successive governments following your initiative. And I would hope that indeed, if the Vice President heads the National Development Planning Commission, and he's seen to have been successful in the purposes of the plan, it will lay a precedent for the future which others would want to emulate. Nothing succeeds like success, and that's the best way we can go ahead with it.
We thank you for your answer. I will go to the President and the presidential candidate of the NDC to answer the same question in 3 minutes.
Indeed, I think there's a confusion in the mind of the NPP presidential candidate in the answer he gave. That is exactly the concern we have in this country, that when political parties leave government, the plans and visions that are instituted are thrown away. And so if we assume that every 4-year cycle, a government potentially could lose elections, it means every 4 years we'll have a new national development planning framework. And that is why the CRC flagged that issue. And so to say that immediately you come into office, your manifesto is going to be put, you wait for 2 years, we waited for the GPRS2 to run its course, because an attempt had been made to create a stakeholder participation in GPRS2. And that's why when we came into office, we were not in a hurry to throw GPRS2 away. We waited for GPRS2 to run its course before we presented the GSGDA. And so I don't see what problem the MPP presidential candidate is fixing by saying immediately I come to government, I'm not waiting for 2 years, I'm taking my manifesto, I'm putting a plan in place. That is the problem we want to cure. And making your vice president the chair of NDPC, politicizing the NDPC, I think he's absolutely lost his way. What we're saying is there's a difference between a national vision, and that is what the NDPC creates. The NDPC is supposed to create a national development planning framework, and that is the overarching framework of what as a nation we want to achieve and where we want to go. Within that national development planning framework, we can have our own political, ideological, operational plans that must fit into the national development planning framework. And so it's like turning the whole planning issue on its head. What we are doing is we're implementing the GSGDA, which was brought about as a result of wide stakeholder consultation. What we need to do is to ensure that we coordinate the planning function of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning and the mandate that the NDPC has, in order that the NDPC and the MOFEP are working in sync rather than at cross purposes. Because the MOFEP, that's the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning, is responsible for the 3-year rolling plan, which is the MTEF, in terms of the budget cycle. And so what we are doing currently, we're not waiting to come into power to do, what we're doing currently is synchronizing the MTEF and the National Development Planning Framework, which is the Ghana Shared Growth and Development Agenda. And if we do that, we'll find that there will be no conflict between MOFEP and NDPC, and we'll make much quicker progress than we have done in the past.
Welcome back. This is Newsfile. We're on Joy 99.7 FM in Accra and affiliate stations across the country. We're on the Joy News channel on Multi-TV. My guests are seated. Felix Ofosukwache is with the Research and Advocacy Platform. Nana Kumia is the Communications Director of the NPP. Godwin Adagwena is a lawyer and a lecturer. And Kweku Bako is the Managing Editor of the New Crusading Guide newspaper. Gentlemen, good morning and thank you for joining us. Let's quickly get into our conversations. And for you at home, listening or watching, you can send us a text 1422 or 1760 across networks. You can put your thoughts on our Facebook wall, facebook.com/joy997, or you can send us a tweet. My handle is KO Nkrumah. We'll be happy to share your thoughts with the rest of the world. Let's start off with the IEA debates. Let's talk about the composure, the questions, the answers, the assessment that you come to after you watched and listened to your presidential candidates. There were a number of interesting themes that were discussed. The NDPC debate, education, healthcare. Let's hear what you make of them. And while at that, tell me, will the debates really influence voters? And was the PPP, was the IPP and some of the other parties missed? Felix, let me start with you.
Well, thank you very much, Kojo, and good morning to your viewers and listeners, as well as my colleague panelists. Well, I think that anybody who watched the debates and anyone who is desirous of making very objective analysis would agree that in terms of composure, in terms of comportment, I think President Mahama carried the day. He certainly was very presidential in his posture. Again, going into this debate, it was clear that the three co-debaters that he was going to face, being members of the opposition or being leaders of the opposition, were going to come at him. So to the extent that he was able to field their criticism and still manage to put across in very robust terms the achievements of this government, and then following from that, outline very credible, pragmatic programs going into the future. I think that one needs to give him a lot of credit. He certainly showed the sort of gravitas that any president is expected to have. He demonstrated depth. He demonstrated that he had substance in abundance. And in all of this, what I look out for is substance rather than style. I think that he showed that he had command over what was happening in the country. He was on top of his brief, and he was aware of what was happening around him. Dr. Abu Sakara, to some extent, also comported himself very, very well, except that I was slightly disappointed with his output. You know, the tendency is for underdogs to do well at these debates, because invariably they will not be under as much pressure as the two main contenders, that is the NDC, NPP presidential candidates. But Dr. Sakara, unfortunately, was not able to do a Pakwisi-Ndu, as it were, in the last debate. You know that in the last debate, Pakwisi-Ndu really came out very, very well, because he was not under pressure. He was not expected to be the man to carry the day, but he delivered. Dr. Sakara, some people said he was okay. I think that he performed below my expectations. I expected much more from him. Mr. Hassan Arega, well, he has come in for very harsh criticism. I do not subscribe to that criticism. I think that it takes a lot of courage for someone who is relatively young like him to be able to stand up to the sort of competition that he came up against. So yes, it certainly wasn't the most exciting of performances from him, but I would not be quick to condemn him. I will commend him for his courage and the effort that he put in. Certainly next time he should prepare much, much better than he did this time. Nana Addo certainly was a disappointment. You know, it is no longer fashionable to go as an opposition leader to such platforms, only to hurl attacks and not give a clear indication as to what you are going to do. Nana Addo is too much steeped in that old-fashioned politics, where all that the opposition leader has to do is to churn out attacks and criticism, most of which are baseless anyway, most of which are not based on the reality on the ground. Again, the very, very little proposals that he came up with failed to meet any serious expectation. For instance, his take on job creation was most bewildering. He says that he was going to introduce a pavement initiative as a way of employing people. For someone who has attacked the NDC for allegedly not creating enough jobs, his proposal was most outlandish. How does he intend to pave all the streets in Accra? And for which reason he thinks that the teeming youth who require jobs will be able to, or will be accommodated with such an initiative, unless, of course, those pavements are going to be made of gold. And I don't think that Nana Addo is going to make any headway in terms of convincing people that he had what it takes to resolve the particular problem of unemployment. I'm sure we will come to the specific issues. But let me also point out that his penchant for relying on falsehood as a premise for launching those attacks must be condemned. And I think that his handlers would do him a lot of good if they gave him accurate figures. He should not cite the internet as a source for any information. That is not what any serious leader does. He has opportunity, by virtue of the fact that he has members of parliament, to obtain any government information that he so requires. Because he was not diligent enough, because he was not thorough enough to take his time and research the subject, he came out churning figures and facts that were completely inaccurate. His take on health was most disappointing. To make a blanket sweeping statement that the National Health Insurance Scheme had collapsed when he could not provide figures to back it was most embarrassing. Again, his forays into agriculture to suggest that somehow the agricultural sector is collapsing and is not doing well was most embarrassing when set against the figures that President Mahama put out. Again, his tendency to accuse this government of corruption without providing any basis must also be condemned. I don't think that that is the sort of leader that Ghana requires. When leaders make pronouncements, they must make those pronouncements on the basis of fact, especially when they want to win the confidence of the people who are watching them at that particular time. So in all, I expected the outcome that we had. My only disappointment with Dr. Abu Sakara. And now I expected him to go the way that he went, because he has always done that over the last 3 years. He has been huffing and puffing and making very outrageous proposals that he is even unable to defend when put under pressure. President Mahama, he was solid, he was presidential, he displayed equanimity, he displayed a certain in-depth knowledge of the Ghanaian situation. He was able to maximize his time. He used his rebuttals very, very well. He was not in a hurry to rebut everything that was said, but those rebuttals that he did were timely, especially the one that he did after Dr. Sakara gave his take on Agric. you notice that it was not necessarily a rebuttal in the sense of addressing something that Dr. Sakara had raised, but he seized the opportunity to throw further light on the solid achievements that this government had chalked. He showed from the statistics that he read out that Agric is in fact doing much better than it ever did under the MPP. But simply because the services sector, especially the telecoms industry, has overtaken Agric as the leading contributor to our GDP, it will create a certain false impression that Agric is not doing well. But when set against what was achieved in 2008, Agric is doing much, much better. He also explained that we've had a certain shortfall in logging and forestry, I believe. But that is not certainly a bad thing. If you are not felling as many trees as you were in the past, it cannot be a bad thing, because all over the world, countries are moving to a situation where they preserve their forests. So if we have a situation where we are not felling as many trees as we were doing in the past, I don't think that that can be a problem. The only difficulty we've had is with fisheries, and we've had a challenge with illegal fishing by some unscrupulous foreign elements. Even that is being checked as we speak, and that is what created a certain false impression that Agric was falling. Those were the only two subsectors under the Agric sector that had fallen. But in terms of the overall picture, we are doing much better now. Look at the cocoa industry. 1 million metric tons, which had never been achieved in our history. The closest the MPP came was 680,000 metric tons, even in 2007. By the time they left power in 2008, it had dropped. But we achieved 1 million metric tons. Rice production, for instance, has gone up by a whopping 30%. Because government has introduced initiatives like the Youth in Agric concept. Government has introduced a vigorous mechanization project. I mean, before the MPP left office, the Ministry of Agric could only boast of 4 combined harvesters that were used nationwide to harvest rice. As we speak, the Ministry of Agric has 140 combined harvesters that is used by various farmers across the country to harvest their rice. Again, there are numerous rice mills that are coming up. As I speak to you, there's one that is coming up at Nyankwala, which is a collaboration between SADA and Avanash that will have the capacity to process every bag of rice that is produced in the northern, upper east, and upper west regions. So this is a country that is making progress in the agri sector. If Nana Addo wants to attack this sector, he has to carry out further research and demonstrate that there is a real compelling need for him to be voted into power to do better or to survey the agri situation. But he cannot base his attacks on falsehood and ideas that clearly are non-existent on the ground. I must also emphasize that Nana Addo's conduct in whole was a bit surprising. You see, this is a very serious debate. And when you want to be president, you must behave exactly like the president. I do not buy this claim that when you are in opposition, you are allowed to take liberties. You must behave in every measure as the president. To the extent that Nana Addo could sometimes be unruly in this debate, was most disconcerting. And I sat there and wondered why he felt that it was important to laugh at everything that President Mahama said. Sometimes he tried to overrule you, the moderators, which I thought was unfortunate. Again, that demand that he made at the tail end of the debate for an extension of time was most unnecessary, because it showed a man who was not prepared, a man who is not adaptable, simply because he had gone to rehearse a final delivery that could last for 3 minutes. He was requesting for 3 minutes. I don't think that that is the test of a man who will be able to work under pressure. He had to tailor his message within those 2 minutes. In any event, when he was given those 3 minutes, he still flubbed it. He was unable to offer a concise, crisp delivery. He had to be cut off by the bell. But look at President Mahama. He maximized the time. Dr. Abu Sakara did say, and to some extent, Mr. Hassan Ayariga. So in all, any objective analyst will tell you that President Mahama carried the day because of the substance in the delivery that he made. I think that Dr. Sakara will come second, Nana Addo will come third, and then Hassan Ayariga will come last. But even then, it is not flattering at all for Nana Addo to be third and for Hassan Ayariga to be fourth.
We'll be happy to hear your thoughts by text 1422 across networks, so you can put them on our Facebook or facebook.com/joy997. I'll go to Nana Kumia. He'll have his 10 minutes as well for his assessment.
Well, thank you, Kojo. Let me also say good morning to everybody, my panelists and also your listeners. The IEA debate, you listen to my brother Felix Ofosu-Kwakye, it brings to mind the determined policy of the NDC to do propaganda. This is a government that officially has propaganda officers right up to the national level, and they even have deputies. So you have propaganda secretary and deputies. This is a government where officials in the government, ministers of state, have been seen urging public servants to lie and distort information deliberately, just to make the government look good. You have a Minister of State saying publicly that the letters and information that they had provided to the World Bank were lies because they wanted the government to look good. This is the situation that Ghanaians are faced with. And listening to Felix, it becomes very clear that this policy of distortion, of lies, of propaganda is entrenched in the NDC. Now, when you move away from the propaganda and the lies and the distortion, and you speak to objective Ghanaians, the impression that you get is that either Nanado or Dr. Sakara were either the first or the second. John Mahama was third, and the other gentleman, what's his name? Ayariga was fourth. This is the consistent appraisal that you get from objective-minded people. And I agree totally. John Mahama was totally not himself. I've known John Mahama for a while. He came out like he was frightened of something. Even NDC communicators have said that they were disappointed by John Mahama's performance, that he appeared timid. In fact, somebody told me, somebody was sitting right next to the stage, said that it looked like John Mahama was not there. And this person is a very objective person. What he said to me is that John Mahama didn't seem to be there. He didn't seem to be present. Nanado was visionary. He projected vision. He projected confidence. Even if you didn't agree with some of the sentiments that he had expressed, the confidence was there, totally unmistakable. He was engaging. He was the star of the night, no doubt about it. But of course, for the propaganda people, they have to do their job. But Felix raises some interesting issues that can very, very easily be dismissed. He says that he seeks to tell us that Nanado was there to launch attacks. Oh, brother, you don't know what attacks means. The man was criticizing the current situation. That was what he was doing. In fact, it was John Mahama who was launching personal attacks, calling his colleagues confused and so on. It was John Mahama who was launching personal attacks. Nanado was attacking, critiquing the current situation. And of course, if he's offering himself to be the president, it means that he's not happy with the current situation. He must critique the current situation as a basis for his own vision. And that's absolutely spot on. If there were any attacks, it was John Mahama who was launching personal attacks on people. Now, Felix and Nanado engage in some falsehood. I don't know if all of us understand the proper meaning of falsehood. On the Cuban matter, that Nanado was quoting wrong figures, John Mahama said that the cost per student per year is $5,000. I mean, okay, John Mahama is the president, but we cannot call him a liar. But obviously, he had been grossly misinformed. Grossly misinformed. I have in my hand here, Kojo, 2 documents. The first one is a memo from the Chief of Staff. You can see it here. Written on the 16th of December, 2011. Felix, I'll give you a copy. And it was received in the Ministry of Finance on the 19th of December. And it states clearly, now I read to you the 3rd paragraph. It is to be noted that the total amount involved for the training of 250 medical students over a 6-year period under the new medical cooperation agreement between the governments of Ghana and Cuba is 79.9 million Ghana cedis. 79.9 million Ghana cedis. There it is. I'd like your cameras to pick it up so every Ghanaian can see, written in black and white. When you do the calculation, this works out to $30,000 per student. It works out to just around 50,000 Ghana cedis per student, and works out to $30,000 per student. This is a memo from the castle to the Ministry of Finance to pay. But there's also the cabinet memo, which I also have in my hand. Felix, let me read this one once before you. Oh, you don't want to be worried.
How much did Nanado say it will cost?
30,000.
No, Nanado said it cost 105 Ghana cedis. And he claims that the Ghana Medical Association said it will cost 30,000 Ghana cedis. The Ghana Medical Association has said they never said that.
Can I finish?
No, address
John Mahama said 5,000.
No, Nanado said 105,000 Ghana cedis. Okay. Why are you ignoring that?
Can I finish? John Mahama said $5,000. I have shown you clearly that memo from the castle, his own office, to the Ministry of Finance, put it at $30,000 per student. There it is. You don't want to be confused by the facts, but that's okay.
No, but what was
now you have in my hand the cabinet memo written by Joseph Yile Chire, Minister for Health, August 2011. On page 6, it talks about the financial implication. This cabinet memo is on funding the services of the Cuban Medical Brigade under the revised Ghana Cuban Medical Corporation, August 2011. On page 6, paragraph 6, it talks about the financial implications. It says, and I quote, the cost of training a senior high school graduate as a medical officer in Cuba is 50,660 cedis, Ghana cedis per annum, made up of tuition and living expenses. So it states very clearly 50,000 Ghana cedis in August 2011. That works out to around $30,000. So what is this business that John Mahama came up with at the $5,000? Look at the difference between $5,000
so you had these documents. And why did Nanado say it cost 105,000 Ghana cedis? Address that. He was certainly lying.
Let me, you are heckling me.
I'm not heckling.
But because I listened to you quietly as you did your propaganda.
I was only helping you with facts.
Okay, fine. But let me
that in case you forgot it.
Can I go on?
Go ahead.
Now let me help you. Assuming that you are saying Nanado also got it wrong, John Mahama is the president. Excuse me. John Mahama is the president. This Cuban arrangement was done under his auspices. The memos that were presented to the cabinet were presented by his ministers. The letters from the chief of staff all came from his office. So he is privy to these documents that I have shown to you. And he says 5,000. And the documents, both documents, the cabinet memo and the memo from the chief of staff's office, all say $30,000. Where did the president get a 5,000? And then Phyllis talks about Nana saying agric is falling. And I heard John Mahama too trying to say that the production volumes have gone up. In your own budget statement, there it is. There it is on page 287. 2012 budget statement. The figures are there. 2008, agric grew or expanded by 7.4%. In 2011, it had fallen to below 2%. General agric. John Mahama sought to explain that by saying, no, production went up, volumes went up. When we say the growth rate fell, we're saying that it expanded, but the rate of expansion is declining. It's a very simple fact. Every first-year student knows this. And he says that it's because logging declined, and is good because he has good benefits for the environment. It is not logging. Crops, which is what we eat. Look at it. In 2008, crops grew by 8.6%. 2011, it grew by less than 5%. This is your own budget statement. Fishing was a critical part of agriculture, mainstay of our people on the coast. It grew by 17.3% in 2008. That was the time somebody went and stood somewhere and said, and when he came, fishing last year grew by just 1.7.
Just a minute.
When it grew by 17.3.
A minute to wrap up.
In your own budget. Now he talked about rice. They have increased rice production by 30%. They started saying this thing in 2009. Up to today, they are still saying 30%.
It's untrue.
So when you grew rice production
last year.
But you see, as for propaganda, they run away very quickly when you present the facts. And these are the facts. Kojo, look, this people say they've increased rice production by all kinds of percentages. Look at the figures. In 2010,
these are figures coming from customs.
Okay.
Okay.
In 2010, rice the volume of rice we imported was 105.6 million kilograms. In 2011, it had jumped from 105 million to 164 million kilograms. So the reality on the ground doesn't support the propaganda that is being churned out. He talked about Nana. Let me just finish it because you're in a hurry. He talked about Nanado overruling moderators. It's a joke. Nanado showed leadership.
Oh, it's
you know, when
unruliness.
can I finish?
If you overrule,
I kept quiet. I kept quiet when
Let him land so that I can go to my other
but you see, this strategy, Phyllis, I don't want to say it's strategy. No, but I kept very quiet as you spoke.
It's not such a big
You see, and you should show me the same, reciprocate. Okay? Now, Kojo, he talked about Nanado being unruly. Do you understand unruliness? The man showed control and initiative. Because, you know, when he asked for the 1 minute extension, John Mahama agreed. But you see, in your own documents, the IEA's own guidelines sent to every candidate, which you are supposed to have read, it stays on page 14, and I have it in my hand, Felix. I brought them here so that you don't get away with the propaganda. It says,
when you
very
turn
clear,
documents,
that
when you turn documents,
can I finish?
Let him land.
It says that on page 14 of the document sent by the IEA to the candidates, it says that all candidates will have the opportunity of answering the same questions. Each candidate will have the first opportunity, but then it goes on. After the question time, each presidential candidate will be given 3 minutes to make closing statement.
So that's what he was insisting on.
That's what he was insisting on.
Godwin, let me bring you in.
You were sitting there, you didn't know about it. You were timid.
You have heard the parties do their
analysis
of how things unfolded, the analysis of the performance of their candidates and how they answer the questions. What do you think? I imagine you watched and listened.
Yes, I did. But I would want to look at the process, the arrangement that brought together the 4 presidential aspirants on that occasion, and then the significance of that process for our democracy in general, and then the forthcoming election in particular. You know, it was an occasion that brought them to a controlled environment. Control in the sense that they did not determine the issues they wanted to speak to. Someone else did. Even though there may be issues that they already have spoken about and therefore were aware of. But the very fact that they had to respond to questions that were coming from an external source was a difference from what they have been doing across the country. Now, the significance of that to some section of the society was that it allowed people to have a calm appreciation of what the presidential aspirants were proposing to do, should they be given the opportunity to rule the country. You know, it was a question and answer session. So you are able to see how the person understands the issues, how the person proposes to deal with the issues, and therefore in a position to tell whether the way in which the person answered the questions and the answers given were enough to, as it were, taking that as an index to get you convinced of the person's suitability for the office. But aside of that, we also would have to look at it from the point of view that it did not allow all the political parties and individuals contesting the election to participate. But we can also understand that because this was a private initiative. So if this was the agenda of the private institution, we can accept that. But it would have been better if the other parties were involved. Now, if you are to assess the performance of each of the candidates, you have to appreciate the fact that they were each coming from a different perspective. Taking the president, for example, he had the unenviable task, so to speak, of defending his government and the policies it has implemented over these years. It is precisely that legacy which is under attack. And the very fact that you have this number of candidates coming up to compete against you in itself is an indication that they and the people who support them do not think that what has happened over the years is satisfactory enough. So that in itself was an obstacle the president had to overcome. That is to say, to be able to defend the record of his government and then be able to tell us whether or not that is the same record that they are going into the next 4 years with, or they are going to change course. And if they are going to change course, why? So that presented a difficulty for the president. And you could observe it in the way he answered some of the questions and in the way he even approached them. To some extent, I felt that he got a little bit distracted. I mean, having to respond to some of the issues that his opponents raised. And if I talk about responding, not responding to the issues, but to the personality, I mean, of the debater. Because you were to tell us what, I mean, your government has been doing and whether what it has been doing, in your considered view, is okay, and that was, I mean, whether you were going to go ahead with that or you're going to change. So if, I mean, you have to use that space of time to also respond to what your other person was saying, it to some extent was destructive. But if you also look at it from the point of view of the other parties, particularly the New Patriotic Party, it is easy, I mean, to point to the weaknesses of your opponent. And every government, no matter how diligent, no matter how competent, no matter how good, no matter how well-intentioned, there will always be problems at every point in time. You cannot be pointing at your own problems in a competition like this, even if you want to be sincere. So it is much easier for the other person to say that, there goes your weakness. And it is also even easier to say that, I mean, this is what I have to do. Because you then don't have a record, I mean, there and then to defend. So when you look at it from those perspectives, it becomes very difficult for you to say, I mean, because what are you going to score? I mean, the president is best or the New Patriotic Party candidate is best. You look at each person in the context of what he or she had to say. But by and large, they were all controlled. As for those other issues that they are raising, these are things that will come up if you have to think on your feet in a fierce competition like this. And I think that, I mean, for some people, we can do away with those things. Coming to the statistics, I mean, the very fact that you will have the two leading politicians in this particular race, I mean, individuals who themselves have had the opportunity to be in government before, disagreeing, I mean, on these statistics, tells us a lot about our institutions. I mean, those institutions that are supposed to produce, I mean, these pieces of information and then data, and therefore the significance of the right to information law. There should be no reason why statistics on aggregate, statistics on some of the issues that we raised, I mean, should not reconcile, because you'll be going to a particular state institution to take them from. So that is an aspect that I think that as a nation we need to develop, because those are the institutions that will provide an objective assessment of whatever is happening, and then a basis upon which we can forecast into the future. But then also, I mean, if you want to consider whether this exercise will in any way have an impact on the voting patterns, I am unable to see, I mean, how that can be. But my own position on debates, I mean, formal debates, I mean, is that, I mean, if debates and debating points and could be basis to determine how well a person will do in governance, then I think that the late Professor K. Buzia, I mean, the late Professor Mills, and even our first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, would not have had any faults, because these have been in their own right, I mean, we're good debaters in a way. But generally speaking, it gives us a sense of what the candidates are made up of. And I think that it's good, but we should have a platform that brings in all the political parties.
Now, let me start off on that one, and then I'll go to the possibility of influencing voters. You know, in America, for instance, where these debates are very well established, they have quite a number of parties, but, you know, the presidential debates commission in America always narrows down very often to the two leading contenders to play ball, as against the conversation here that maybe let's broaden it more and bring everybody up on stage.
Well, I do not know how far that system has had to develop up to the point where it is now. But I would want to believe that even if we want to adopt such a policy, we have to start from somewhere. I mean, there must be a basis on which we can all agree that at a certain point, only some are allowed to participate. At a certain point, we can allow all of them to participate. My understanding is that what the IEA is doing is using those parties that have representation in Parliament. I mean, we can debate that to come to a conclusion whether that is acceptable or not.
They say debates are for the undecided voters. In your interactions with hopefully some undecided voters, have any persons been able to make up their mind looking at what they saw and what they heard?
The issues are not new issues, and were not new issues. And they are issues that have been talked about and discussed over and over again. People, I mean, I've interacted with people, and they will always speak, I mean, talk about, oh, this person was impressive, or that person was not impressive, and all of that. But as to whether those impressions could form the basis of a decision on the day of the election, I mean, I don't think that I have come across anybody who says that because of this debate,
I'm going to take this decision. Exactly. Anyway, it's just one down, two more to go. There's a vice presidential debate coming up, and then there's a final presidential debate coming up. Quickly, let me hear you.
Well, it was a good event. And I like a certain, evolving consensus, at least among the major parties or the parties that had the opportunity to take part in this event, that they all appear now to appreciate the positive nature of the IEA platform. We have moved away from those who, not too long ago, were so cynical, and I'm being charitable about the IEA platform. The platform and the credibility of the IEA was so bastardized that, and apart from the fact that it was credibility issues, we were also told about the restrictive nature of the platform and the fact that it had no value relative to campaigning and how the value of campaigning messages and issues. I am happy that at least there is near consensus, if you like, among those who took part in that event, that this is a useful platform. This gave us a good opportunity to sell our message, even to test our competencies, capabilities, and qualities in terms of the individuals who stood on the platform. So we are making progress in that sense. And then, of course, there are still issues, as you raised, the exclusion factor, the PPP, very angry with what had happened. And then I'm told even Kofi Wayo was also complaining. So you see, we have a problem there. Parliamentary representation has been the basis. People have asked, how about those who successfully filed presidential nominations and are going out there to seek votes? How about an independent presidential candidate who doesn't belong to any party, so will not have parliamentary representations? All these things are legitimate issues to raise, and it's to challenge us to see if we can develop some formats to contain it. I, sitting here right now, haven't developed any serious alternatives, but I believe that we are capable of looking at how to structure these things so that we can accommodate others. Or perhaps there are other civil society groups who can decide to float alternative formats to contain the other parties who are not being brought in, or the NCC and the rest. We have a lot of knowledge out there in terms of our Ghanaian expertise for people to come up with some new formulas. I don't have a firm one at this stage. Then, of course, the event itself, it dragged for too long. It was worrying, nearly 5 hours. That can then take away some of the shine. People can start getting bored, even though it was such an exciting event. For me, I stayed awake till the end, of course, but I'm looking at others, and I've heard others complain. Then, why don't we restrict? I'm told there were some subject areas that the candidates were told they were going to discuss. If so, fine, but maybe too many questions came on board. So it takes too much time. You know, next time perhaps, if it's true you have restricted subject areas, fine, but let's reduce the questions. Also, the allocation of time. I mean, 3 minutes to articulate a vision or a minute to answer a question. I have difficulties with that. And look, almost all of them, in fact, all of them, were caught by the bell at different levels. So I was surprised Felix was giving an impression as if President Mahama was not ever caught. He was caught on some levels. So that's part of it. Then the number of times for rebuttals, I also think we can look at those things. These are all things just to improve on the platform. Otherwise, I think that is a very useful platform. It helps to deepen our democratic culture, and we ought to improve on it. You know, so that's it. If it comes to question of, and then of course the audience behavior too. I realize you were challenged at a certain stage with the kind of caliber of people who were invited, because strictly by invitation, and I thought that occasionally, yes, because we are all human, but it was getting to a stage. It didn't have to provoke the moderators to caution. It didn't have to happen, considering the caliber of people there. And I think at one stage, the PNC flag bearer even attracted what I would call ridicule of some sort. And it doesn't help. Those of us who were out there could be laughing our heads off, but I'm not sure those who were in there ought to have been sent in that level. I don't know what was wrong with your timekeepers. I didn't really get it, but there were complaints from your side. Again, that we must watch, you know. So in this sense, it's still a useful exercise, and I believe the IEA and all the stakeholders would have done effective post-mortem to improve on it, so that the second one and the vice presidential one may not suffer some of these problems. Having said that, issue of assessment, last time, and I think it was last week, I made it clear here that I'm not in the habit or tradition of ranking and rating, because see, that exercise is driven usually by partisanship and some levels of bias and emotional attachments and affections, and it doesn't help. I leave that to those who want to do so. I like to assess the performance based on specific questions and answers that came up. Some of them had their strengths, no doubt about it. Some too had their weaknesses. You know, I've said something about the PNC flag bearer, and perhaps I began from a wrong premise. You know, I was wondering how the wife was feeling. I think I was not fair to them, so I've withdrawn that, retracted, and apologized. But I will ignore his performance for good reasons. And you remember, the last time we spoke about their individual appearances, I assessed the president, Nana Akufo-Addo and Abu Sakara, as having performed quite well, and decided not to comment on Mr. Ayaraga. I will do the same. But I think the three showed that they have answers to some of the questions confronting this nation. They have the capability to stand and articulate their visions and you know, give answers. All of them, the three, I believe so. You know, you may then decide that perhaps in the energy area there was a deficit with this particular candidate. In education, perhaps it wasn't too clear. Those things can be done, and it's useful that we are able to do those things to help, you know, the way we develop our democracy. But I do not go for individual rating and rankings, because really, look, Felix rated President Mahama #1. Akomia rated Nana Addo #1. I've heard the CPP guys do the same. Indeed, there are PNC guys who said their man won. You see? So really, it's the subjectivity that informs that. The selectivity, the partisanship is such that I'm unable to join that band.
As exciting as the whole, you know, activity of presidential candidates, or some of them engaging in a debate, may have been, there are some who hold the view that, you know, yeah, nice idea, they came, they stood, they answered questions, but would it change anybody's mind? Would it get anybody to move in any direction? What sort of value does it then leave the political exercise with?
I remember those days when we were debating the NDC's decision to boycott, and I want to remain consistent. I remember saying that it's a platform that has a certain target audience. Because of the electronic media projection, it goes a little bit beyond that. But you realize that, for me, that's my assessment, I may be wrong, that more and more is the middle class, and in this case the professional groups, the business class, you know, the students, the youth, the educated youth and the rest, who get targeted by this kind of event. as to how it will translate into votes in terms of the mathematics and statistics, unfortunately or fortunately, I'm not a pollster. I'm unable to give you an answer there. But I think it's a useful exercise in terms of its academic, educational, and intellectual impact. So yes, it is possible that out there may be few people who decide that, oh, this man has leadership qualities. This man has a storehouse, is a storehouse of information. He's got knowledge, and it may influence some people to vote in some direction. Unfortunately, we are unable to determine that in terms of statistical precision. I mean, or you know, the precision. We're not. It's going to remain a zone where, and yes, in fact, I think that's a better word, a realm of speculation. You know, so how do we? But it's a useful exercise, and don't underestimate it. For those classes that I've mentioned, some of them would look at you, listen carefully, and some can make decisions on it. In any case, that is why you see some of the candidates are having interactions and dialogue sessions with some of these identifiable groups. Okay, why do you think they are doing that? One, to make sure that they can instill in them the confidence that we have the competencies to deliver on the area of your interest. So now come to a platform like IEA or any other where you are asked questions about your investment policies, your energy policies. They will be watching closely to see whether what you say synchronizes with the kind of things you've been dealing with them and things. So it has this usefulness. You know, my brother said, and these are the specific areas, but I realized that some jumped ahead, looking at you talking about the NDPC thing. What happened there goes beyond the clash of views between President Mahama and Nana Akufo-Addo, as far as I'm concerned. It's a major issue. We can first look at whoever's answer was inconsistent, but that is marginal. Deeper are serious questions to ask as to whether we really want our national development plan entrenched or not entrenched in terms of the commission's functions and things. These are bigger issues. No, the Cuban thing, for me, it is a question of full disclosure. It's a question of accountability and transparency. Government ought to be able to provide us with information now. I'm not going for any of the figures. Clearly, there are problems with the figures the president gave in terms of the 5,000. And because he is critical, because the thing was managed under his leadership, and because he is in government, there is more obligation on his part to put the right information out there, which will kill whatever speculation people are going to make. But the point about internet, I've been wondering, is it true that the internet is not a credible source of information? Is it true? I thought it is the kind of information you are looking for, and who puts that information on the internet. Because in this era of ICT, internet is critical. And I believe that you can find credible information. You can find information that has integrity on the internet, dependent on where you go for it on the internet. You see, of course, there are times in this country's history that governments discovered the plotting of a coup d'etat on the internet. That obviously was an obviously a sick joke, but it did happen in this country. So if you go for that kind of information, then
which year was it?
1999. You know, then you have a problem. But there are thousands of information out there. I do so. I'm, if you like, you know, a researcher of some sort, and you'll be surprised that there are a lot of good quality information that you can procure or, access on the internet. It is where you go for it and how you use the information.
Now, in wrapping up on this, before we go to the other subjects, and we're going to spend time talking about free SHS, which also featured in this debate. Two things. What will be your recommendations to the organizers and the various parties to improve? And I've seen you've got a copy of the 2000 presidential debate at the Accra International Conference Center here, the brochure produced on the back of that one. Yeah. We've been doing it for a while now. What will be your recommendations on how to improve it? That's number one. Number two, let me read you this text. The next time, the telcos or the organizers should create a voting platform during the debate, like it's done elsewhere, so that we will know for a fact who actually won. What do you make of a proposal like that? I'll give you 2 minutes to wrap up, and then we'll go for a break, come talk about free SHS, what Papo Shankuma is saying, what Dr. Otabel said some time ago. Felix.
Yeah, and before I do that, let me clarify this. Nana Kuvia conveniently ignores what Nanado said on the cost of training doctors in Cuba. And whilst it can be said that President Mahama obviously slipped He intended to say 50,000 and said 5,000. But Nanado came. No. Listen. Nanado came with a prepared lie. It is not the first time that he said it. He said it cost 105,000 Ghana cedis.
Is that what he said?
That's what Nanado said.
I'm trying to get my producer. And I've sent a text to my producer to play back exactly
I am absolutely certain.
That's
and
fine.
everybody heard him. He said 100.
For the purposes of everybody who's watching and listening,
105,000 Ghana cedis. And then said that it was excessive. The basis for saying it was excessive was that he claimed that the Ghana Medical Association says it will cost 30,000 Ghana cedis a year to train a doctor in Ghana. Meanwhile, the Ghana Medical Association has come out and said that he have never put such a position forward. And that they actually said it will cost $36,000. $36,000.
Yes.
They issued that statement only yesterday. Yes, it was on my journal online, and your outfit broadcast it. Nanado said it will cost 105,000, and that the Ghana Medical Association. And you see, the reason why Nanado cannot be forgiven is that it is something that he has repeated consistently. MPP propagandists have repeated this consistently. And therefore, it is important that Nana Kumia, when he has his chance, explain why Nanado goes about lying about this figure. Again, I maintain, Kojo, that in terms of performance, specific performance, the agri sector is doing much better. Because how do you assess the performance of a sector? It is the volumes. If you were producing 100,000 metric tons of rice in 2008, how much rice is being produced now? If it had gone down to say 50,000 metric tons, then you say that we have a problem. But if that thing has shot up to 263,000 metric tons, you cannot say that we are retrogressing. But it is the case that other sectors have overtaken agri as a leading contributor to GDP.
So tell me about your recommendations and what do you think about having a vote on the back of these?
Well, first of all, I think that, like Kweku pointed out, the program was too drawn out. It took too long to wrap this thing up. I think that next time you may have to look at devising some means to ensure that it is much shorter. But what it does is to begin to bore the participants themselves, makes them more and more tired, and begins to take off the shine on their performance. Again, it is important that in selecting guests, you refrain from allowing party supporters outside of the number that you allocate to political parties to bring. I get the sense that ordinary people walked in without invitation. Well, but that is the impression that I got. Because at a point,
the parties were each given 20.
Yeah,
I'm trying hard not to speak for the IEA because I don't speak for the IEA.
I'm aware of that.
The parties were given 20, that's how come I even got 20 each to distribute for its members. And then some prominent persons, traditional rulers and others were invited. It wasn't an event.
Yeah, but there were instances, especially for New Patriotic Party supporters, who tended to cheer on Nanado and boo Mr. Hassan. I thought that it was most unfortunate.
The NDC people
no. There was no instance where the NDC people cheered. There were general applause. But the MPP, what is it? Stop referring to this as propaganda.
And so your
from your flag bearer to the cleaner in your party.
And so your recommendation is?
My recommendation is that I think that access should be more controlled. The time should be reduced. As for the voting element, again, it will be subjective. Because you are not going to be able to tell who actually is voting. I don't think that if I wanted to make a decision as to who performed, I was going to base it on the poll that is conducted. Because there was a poll on my journal line about 3 weeks ago about which political party would win the elections if it were held on that day. The PPP won, but everybody knows that the PPP would win the elections of 2012. So I think that
they are very optimistic. Now let's give you your 2.5 minutes.
The PPP won. They got about 47%.
Well,
Nanado actually came third.
Interesting. Once again, we are being treated to propaganda, even when it's totally useless. Now we are being told that the NPP people were there and they were booing somebody.
Oh, but that is true. I saw you.
Well, look at
in
that.
fact, I saw Nanado's two daughters.
No,
they were the cheerleaders for Nanado, actually. This is true. I mean, you can choose to close your eyes.
Very proper for me.
This is the people who listen to this were very discerning. So don't come and
Nanado's daughters
disturb them with this propaganda.
But you see, they were cheerleaders.
Felix is saying that he's still insisting that the sectors are expanding. What we have in this country today is what we call the Dutch disease. Nanado mentioned it. John Mahama didn't understand it. What we have is the Dutch disease, where oil is growing, and that is the only one that is growing. All the other sectors are declining.
Not true.
But the figures are here. Kojo, let me take you through. This is the 2012 budget statement that I have in my hand. Page 287. Let me take you through it again. Agriculture. It grew 7.4. Last year, it grew by less than 2%. Crops, it grew by 8.6 in 2008. Last year, it grew by less than 6%. Livestock grew by 5.9% in 2008. Last year, it grew by 5%. And it grew by 5 points. Well, this was about to say 5. Yes. But look at fishing. 17.3% in 2008. Last year, it grew by just 1.7. If you move beyond agriculture, you take manufacturing. It grew by 3.7 in 2008. Last year, it grew by just 1.7. You take electricity. It grew by 19.3% in 2008. Last year, it grew by just 13%. You take construction. 38% growth in 2008. Last year, it grew by 17. You go to the services. You take education, because that is key. In 2008, it grew by, education grew by 13%. Last year, it grew by just 3%. All the sectors are declining, apart from oil. And you see, what makes Ghana's situation even more tragic is that now you have the imports flowing in. So because when you have the Dutch economy, your currency becomes strong.
I mean,
because
our currency is strong.
But with Ghana,
you don't understand the Dutch disease.
Hold on.
Our currency has lost value.
I said that we have Dutch disease. That is the problem.
How do you reconcile the two?
That is the problem.
You have had your say. Let me
so in Ghana, even the currency is falling like a stone.
So there's no Dutch disease.
It's falling the worst in 20 years. And you know what?
Again, another lie. The currency has depreciated by the same margin that it depreciated in 2008. And I said that is the worst in 20 years.
Felix, the guy is totally unruly.
But it is factually inaccurate.
But Felix,
no, hold it. You've had your 2.5 minutes. You have yours. Everybody will have their say.
You made everything you said was factually inaccurate and distorted. But we allowed you to have your say because we believe in freedom of speech and we believe our listeners are discerning. You see, we are sucking in imports, and I gave you the figures. The figures are here. He talked about rice. I just singled out rice, where we were importing 105 million kilograms in 2010. It jumped to 164 in just 1 year, from 105 to 164.
Let him mention the 2012 figure.
The 2012 figure are not complete because you are
just... 17. Hold on. Why are you mentioning? We are in November, right?
Hold on.
We are in November.
Can I finish? You don't understand these things.
Oh, please.
We are still in 2012. The statistics on 2012 is not complete. The stats on 2012 are for the first 6 months. You know, this is a very simple fact.
Okay. Wrap up for me.
But you see, the lies, everything. Look, chicken. We imported 94 million tons by volume. It goes up to 110. Everything we are sucking in imports.
In conclusion,
because we're not producing anything. All the sectors are declining. Agriculture is declining. Industry is declining. Services are declining. So why are you going to create the jobs?
In conclusion,
the IEA talk about the influence on the voters. I don't think that all of these personalities and the IEA and people like yourself, very busy, we all go and sit down because it's just an academic exercise. It has a real impact on the political choices. And I believe that the performance of Nanado would impact on the outcome of the elections as far as the NPP is
any
concerned.
changes in future debates? Maybe should we vote at the end of it to see
what I believe should be done? No, that's for the voting, these things. But what I believe should be done was that there should be maybe 2 tiers. Instead of the vice presidential, let's have 2 tiers, where those representation in parliament, let's say they are on a certain platform. So they can go for the first tier. And then there's a second tier, where those who are not in parliament can also have their turn, because the questions are too many. Now GBC is being forced to organize one for those who are not in parliament and all of that. So I think, going forward, I think that the IEA has blazed a trail. It is time that state takes over.
Yeah.
Congratulate the IEA, because this really is a private institution, and they can set their own rules.
It is.
Let the state, the NCC, let's empower them, let them take over, and then let's all set the ground.
Final comments, Godwin?
As for the propaganda.
Yeah, by way of recommendation.
Likewise, the chief propagandist of your party.
I mean, if you look at the current arrangement, the IEA seems to have 3 debates for the presidential aspirants. And I understand the NCCE has come up with 3 top issues that the voters will want to address. It would have been more effective if each session, or let's say each round, will address a particular topical issue, so that the parties will at least have some time to discuss in detail how they intend to address those issues, so that people will have a better opportunity to appreciate what the issues are. Then the second thing will be making it broader, that is to say, appealing to a much more broader segment than just those in the middle and upper class in terms of the language in which the debates is conducted, that can pose a practical difficulty. And I don't know how we can surmount that, but I think that, we have a lot of people who may not have participated in terms of understanding what the issues.
Final comments?
Well, I think my recommendations are implied in the questions that I raised in terms of the duration of the whole event, allocation of time for questions and answers, and then the number of times for rebuttals. If those things can be improved, I don't have a firm opinion at this stage, but I think there are people who are more competent to come to
give views on that.
But there's one small, it's not a major point, but I still want to put it on record. Before the event, I heard this thing consistently, 3 against 1. And the point being that the 3 other candidates were all out to, more or less seek the throne from the president. It's factual on the surface. But it's not the first time. It is the first time a president had gone. But it's not the first time that an incumbent party or a ruling party's record had been projected on that platform and was a subject of critique by other contestants. When Nana Akufo-Addo was running as a candidate for the 2008 elections, indeed the track record of the NPP administration was the legitimate object of scrutiny and critique by the other candidates. So from that sense, though he wasn't the president, he was representing the ruling party's track record, and that was subjected legitimately to a critical scrutiny.
26 minutes after 10, this Saturday, the 3rd of November 2012. This news file, let me read some of your texts and emails coming through. Kwame says, even if Nana got the Cuba numbers wrong, isn't it the job of the sitting president to put out the right information rather than grossly misinform us? But by the way, what's the difference between $50,000 and 150,000 cedis? If the president meant 50,000 when he said 5,000, Felix will have to stop calling Nane's comments a lie and the president's comments just a slip. Mancha Bruce from Takrady says, in my candid opinion, Nana Akufo-Addo won the night because he was very direct with the core issues that mattered to the ordinary Ghanaian. Dr. Abu Sakara was also okay on the night. The president sounded like an advocate rather than a sitting president seeking another mandate, and he allowed Akufo-Addo to keep setting the agenda for him all through the night. He did not communicate to me. As for Hassan Ayaga, I enjoyed him. JDM, and this one doesn't bear a name, it says, JDM lacked the moral high ground to describe Nana's plan on the NDPC as political. Wasn't the president aware that Mr. P.V. Obing is the current chairman of the NDPC, or was it a deliberate attempt to throw dust into our eyes? Is it not paradoxical for Felix Kwachi to score Hassan Ayaga higher than Dr. Sakara? More of your thoughts coming through this morning. Kuku says, despite their disagreement, I couldn't help but smile at the playful manner in which Felix and Nana are behaving in your studio. I'm watching the show and I'm seeing them. From Aqua Young, Samuel says, my observations about the IEA presidential debate. The audience was a bit unruly. Nanado was more convincing, very inspirational, daring, and appeared to have more stay within a very limited time. You've got some other thoughts for the moderators as well, so I would keep that one to myself. You go on to say Dr. Sakara was very composed, also spoke quite clearly, but not convincing in terms of substance. You give him 72%. This one says President Mahama made good use of his rebuttals. He threw some few below the bell points at Nanado. He got some of his figures wrong, and his argument against free SHS was porous. I'll give him 68%. Mr. Hassan Ayaga, to be honest, reminded me of the late Dan Late and Mr. Agudi. On the whole, the program was good, but we should reduce it to just the two main contenders. 1422 across networks, so you can put your thoughts on our Facebook wall. I want to just play back to you that little bit on how much it costs to train the Cuban doctors. My director is getting it on cue. When we return from our break, we'll play that just before we get into our conversation on free SHS. This is Newsfile. Stay with us. "35 minutes after 10. Nanakumi and Felix are doing their own thing in the studio. But I just quickly want to play back to you. My producer, Sedem Mufori, and my director, Yaya Abubakar, have managed to get that clip of what the candidates, Nanado and President Mahama, really said on the cost of the training for those young persons sent to Cuba. I just want to play it to you to settle the conversation, and then we'll return and continue with our conversation. Stay with us.
We're told by the Ghana Medical Association that they can train, a doctor is trained in Ghana for 30,000 cedis. So the initiative, far from accelerating the delivery of medical care for our people, in fact, is contracting it. We would have used that money much better in empowering the medical institutions in our country to deliver and produce more doctors.
I'm reluctant to use this rebuttal, but I need to set the record straight. The cost of training one child under the Cuban program is $5,000, far lower than the cost of training in our medical school here. And so we had to take that opportunity. I wanted to set that record straight. And so it's not the figure you have. You've kept conjuring pie in the sky figures that do not reflect the reality.
These are figures that are published on the internet and everywhere by your own statements.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Welcome back. Now, I'm given to understand that there's a lengthier version and an edited version. That's what I want to play. My sincere apologies. So let's go back. Let's get that lengthier version so that we all get exactly what they said. Say again. Okay, we'll have to give my director a few minutes to get that one for us so that we play the lengthier version and then we can make our quick comments on that. We want the unedited version. This is Newsfile, 37 minutes after 10. You can send us your thoughts by text 1422 across networks or put them on our Facebook wall, facebook.com/joy997. We'll talk about education right now. And in the week just gone by, two, can I call them stalwarts, made comments on education that maybe I should say muddied the waters. First is Papa Uswankuma. He's a former education minister. He spoke about the fact that even though he's NPP, he thinks that it will be, and his word was, tough to implement the free SHS program. I want to play to you his comments in an interview that he granted. And then newspaper reports, and then subsequently the audio tape emerged of Dr. Mensah Otabil of the ICGC speaking in a sermon some time back. There's a debate about when exactly he made those comments. He also made some comments about free education, or a free education promise from politicians. First, let me play back to you Papa Uswankuma's comments.
The greatest challenge I envisage is where parents, when called upon to contribute in any way towards their children's education, the SHS will say that Jaban also you're free. I mean, for me, that is the greatest challenge. The second challenge, which we have anticipated and which we have plans to address the first year, is the building of more community SHSs. The teacher is the center, and the intention of the NPP is over a period of about 10 years to make teaching one of the most attractive professions in this country. So for me...
Welcome back, and my apologies, we're having to do this back and forth. I'll go back to Papa Uswankuma's and Dr. Otabil's comment shortly. We now have the full unedited clip of those comments on the Cuban costs. Let me play that to you. Let's settle that, and then let's come to free SHS.
The president is saying that I keep on going on matters already on which I should be better educated. The reason why I'm going on is that the facts that he has contradict the real facts on the ground. There's been a 21% decrease in membership of the NHIS in the last 3 years. Fact number one. Fact number two, a threefold increase in visitations by people to the hospitals suggests rather that people are getting sicker, not that they're getting better. You're not sick, you don't go to the hospital. If in the Kufuor era, the ratio between those who were in the scheme and how many times they visited hospital was 1-to-1. Today is 3-to-1. That's an indication that far from the health situation in our country improving, it's getting worse. Thirdly, the president referred to this Cuban initiative, which he led. The amounts of monies means that 105,000 cedis are being spent on the training of one doctor in the Cuban arrangement. We're told by the Ghana Medical Association that they can train, a doctor is trained in Ghana for 30,000 cedis. So the initiative, far from accelerating the delivery of medical care for our people, in fact, is contracting it. We would have used that money much better in empowering the medical institutions in our country to deliver and produce more doctors?
I'm reluctant to use this rebuttal, but I need to set the record straight. The cost of training one child under the Cuban program is $5,000, far lower than the cost of training in our medical school here. And so we had to take that opportunity. I wanted to set that record straight. And so it's not the figure you have. You've kept conjuring pie in the sky figures that do not reflect the reality.
These are figures that are published on the internet and everywhere by your own statements.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Okay, we're back in the studios here, and we've played for you the unedited version of the comments. Nanado said 105,000 cedis for the Cuban training, and that the Ghana Medical Association had indicated earlier that it will cost how much to train here in Ghana? 30,000 to train here in Ghana. The Ghana Medical Association has been speaking to that, but let me give you the opportunity to make a quick comment on that. Felix, I'll start with you quickly. I'll go to Nana Kumi and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I mean, like I pointed out, Nanado told two obvious untruths. First, he quotes a figure that does not exist. He says it costs 105,000 Ghana cedis to train a child under the Cuban scheme, when it's actually 50,000 Ghana cedis. He also quotes the Ghana Medical Association as having said that it costs 30,000 Ghana cedis. And you see, the reason why I'm particular about this is that it is a lie that they've been repeating for almost a year now. Everywhere they go, they make this point. My only regret is that the Ghana Medical Association took so long to come and clarify their position on this particular matter. And I think that it will help if in subsequent years or in subsequent periods, these matters come up. And these associations whose names are mentioned for propaganda purposes come out quickly to clear the air. But let me point out that President Mahama meant to say 50,000 Ghana cedis, not 5,000. But Nanado came with an obvious lie that he had prepared to tell the people of this country. And that is what I find unacceptable.
Quickly.
This is what turns the whole debate into a joke. That we are being told that two people give different figures. As for one, he came and deliberately lied. As for the second one, oh, it's an innocent slip. I mean, Jesus Christ. This is the kind of propaganda that we have been offered on this debate. Two people have been reported to have given different figures. One there is a born liar. The other one there is a choir boy who just made a little mistake. Can you understand this?
Because he's been doing this for a year.
Kojo, the figures that I have here, letters written from the castle to the Ministry of Finance, quote, $30,000. The cabinet memo submitted in cabinet with John Mahama as vice president stroke president, also quote 30,000. How can the man come and stand in front of us and tell us it's 5,000? He is the president. All the initiatives, the costing, the payments were all from his office. How could he have got it wrong? Yet we are being told that, oh, it's a slip. So, as for the other person who's not in cabinet, who's not in the castle, so he is a born liar.
Okay, so let's establish the facts. How much does it cost to train one of these?
But you see, my last point, you see, we must be sure.
Per annum. 50,000 Ghana cedis per annum.
Yeah, but that is my last point. I'll go and check if Nana was multiplying the cost over the period, because the 50,000 is for 1 year.
Yeah, but
so I'm just
300,000.
No, you see, but 30,000. I was just check on that. But it is unforgivable for the president to be telling us 5,000 when he should know better.
As we wrap up, how much does it cost to train one of these guys in Cuba?
The cabinet memo is here.
50,000 Ghana cedis.
Which comes to about $30,000.
Yeah, but Nanado said...
here in Ghana, you forget about what both candidates said. Let's establish the fact. So it's what, 50,000 Ghana cedis? Or in dollars, that's what?
That's $30,000.
And in Ghana, it is...
In Ghana, the Ghana Medical Association, and again, I even have a difficulty with the Ghana Medical Association.
In Ghana, the Ghana Medical Association
honestly,
you hold it.
Yesterday they said it will cost...
Yesterday
they said it will cost $6,000 a year. And they multiplied it by 6 years and said $36,000. But what they forget to add...
Did they say dollars?
They said dollars. They quoted yes in dollars.
So the Ghana Medical Association says, and I'm reading here, it says $50,000. Dr. Frank...
Is that what the Ghana Medical Association says?
Yes, General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association, Dr. Frank, quoting, well, I think he was talking about the 50,000 figure that had been put up. Because I also saw $36,000. So the Ghana Medical Association says $36,000 here in Ghana.
Well, if it's 6,000 times 6 years.
Yes.
But again,
so $36,000.
In Ghana, you won't pay for airfares, you won't pay for your upkeep.
But let's establish the fact.
Exactly.
You have done your political commentary.
That's fact.
You have done your political commentary. Let's establish the fact.
Your objective for what?
$30,000. $30,000 in Cuba. $36,000 in Ghana. Yeah. Kweku.
No, the 30,000 in Cuba. No, 1 second. Kojo, the 30,000 in Cuba is 1 year.
Look,
1 year, not over the 6 years.
I think
that I don't know. We need to establish that.
We need, going forward, we need a fresh, full disclosure from government today. That's what we need.
There's no need for any.
No, we need to. Let's controversy. No.
It is the MPP that is for mischievous purposes.
No.
Trying to create the impression that it costs more than it has been stated here. That has been clarified. Again, the Ghana Medical Association cannot be the authoritative source for how much it costs. It is the universities who do the training. Or the National Council for Tertiary Education. They are the ones who have the authoritative capacity to give us the cost, not the Ghana Medical Association.
Government, we hold government to account on this matter. Some figures have been put out there. Apparently, even the president's own figure is also inaccurate. I'm not going to say a lie. Inaccurate.
That was a clear inaccuracy.
No, that's I want to be fair to everybody in this call. So what government must do now is to issue a statement telling us exactly the facts and figures. Then we can move on from there. If the facts and figures come and we think they are of doubtful validity, we'll come back as citizens. So right now, let's not continue with this debate. Government must first and foremost issue an official release and give us the facts and figures. We shall then authenticate.
This is the cabinet memo.
Yeah, I know.
It's this clear. The cost of training an SHS graduate as medical officer in Cuba is $30,000 per annum.
Let government authenticate this in a statement, and let's proceed from there.
Okay, gentlemen, I thank you. 48 minutes after 10, this is Newsfile. Now let's talk about free SHS. I'm sure our discerning viewers and listeners are making up their minds. Let me go back and play to you Papa Usu Ankume's comments first.
The greatest challenge I envisage is where parents, when called upon to contribute in any way towards their children's education in SHS, will say that Chaban also you're free. I mean, for me, that is the greatest challenge. The second challenge, which we have anticipated and which we have plans to address the first year, is the building of more community SHSs. The teacher is the center. And the intention of the NPP is over a period of about 10 years to make teaching one of the most attractive professions in this country. So for me, the free SHS idea is going to be very tough to implement. But then, what is leadership?
Newsfile is brought.
Okay, welcome back. This is Newsfile. I want to quickly play for you the segment of that Dr. Otabil tape as well that spoke to the subject of free education. And then I'll read the reaction from the ICGC. We'll box it all together and then we'll proceed to our analysis. Do we have that tape?
I was talking to a politician and they were talking about fee-free education. Nobody should pay fees. When we come to power, nobody will pay fees. And I'm sure when you hear all that, you are happy. Nobody will pay fees. Fee-free. Education can never be free. Somebody is paying for it. Tell me who is paying for it. See, when they come to you and say things like fee-free education, you are happy, take your children to school. Say, oh, they don't pay fees. The government is good, we don't pay fees. You know why you think you don't pay fees? It's because you can't even understand what is going into that. Because you see, nothing is free. You are paying for it. Only you are being told you didn't pay. How do you pay for it? Through taxation. Who pays the taxes? Me. So I pay tax and you tell me you've given me free education when it's my taxes that paid for it. So don't tell me any fee-free education. The other thing too is if somebody tells you anything is free, ask them what's the quality. Because if you don't know the quality, don't take it free. If somebody tells you something is free, ask them, what control do I have on it? Because you see, if you think that it's free, even when it's bad, you can't complain. I said to the person, I don't want fee-free education. I don't believe in it. I said, pay me well my due and let me have the joy of paying my own child's school fees, so that my child is not a property of the state. He's my own child, and I have the dignity of a father to pay for my own child. So when my child grows up, I said, I paid your fees. You can't wait till your child grows up, and when he does something, you can't say anything because you didn't pay his fees. So you pay me badly, but give me cheap education. The reason why you and I would take it is because ignorance makes it very easy for you to accept anything. If we are going to be agents of change, one of the first things we have to do is to start getting knowledge.
Those are excerpts of a sermon that Dr. Otabil preached. We are told several years ago. We don't know exactly when. It's still unclear, several years ago, but we'll get into the analysis shortly. In fairness, though, the ICGC has issued a press statement on this subject. I just want to read that for us as we get into analysis. Number one, Pastor Otabil has not made any recent comments on the current debate on various educational policy alternatives. Neither has he expressed open support for any party's position on the matter. Number two, the tape being circulated is a collection of thoughts edited from a message shared by Pastor Otabil several years ago and pieced together to create the impression that he's taking a stand on the current political debate on the issue of education. Number three, Pastor Otabil agrees with the constitutional provision that every Ghanaian child is entitled to and the state must provide free compulsory basic education beginning from preschool to the senior high school level. However, each parent must take responsibility for the academic growth and quality of education that their child receives. And the final paragraph says, Pastor Otabil hopes that all Ghanaians will be challenged to focus on the financial empowerment of the average citizen as a long-term solution to the pro-poor policies being espoused by the various stakeholders in sectors like education, health, and housing. It's signed by Reverend Kofi Ochre, Senior Associate Minister, on the 30th of October. He subsequently granted a number of interviews, during which he was asked when exactly. He said it could have been between 6 and 10 years now. Let's get into an analysis. Nana Kwame, I'll start with you. Spanner in the works or reality check?
Thank you, Kojo. The Owusu Ankoma pronouncement, I don't see how they are a problem. I mean, he's just saying that this is a new policy. It has never been done on the scale on which it is being proposed. So, of course, it will be tough. Nobody has said that it will be a picnic in the park. That I understand you, Joy FM, so well organized. It is going to be tough, but it is revolutionary. It's never happened. So we have no doubt in our minds that it's going to be tough. And we are going to deal with it right from day one, because we know it is revolutionary, but its impact, it will also be revolutionary. So we have no doubts about how tough it will be. But NANADO is going to provide the leadership that is needed to implement it. So we have no big problems with Owusu Ankoma's sentiments. Similarly with Otabil, if you've just read the rejoinder that his office has issued, and it's very clear, he says that he's worried that some people would actually go and sit down and go and piece together various sentiments he had expressed years ago for some political motive. And the gentleman obviously is very unhappy about this kind of activity involving him. And the statement is very clear about that. He also says in the statement that he agrees with the constitutional provision. And for me, this is key. He agrees with the constitutional provision that every Ghanaian child is entitled to, and the state must provide free compulsory basic education, beginning from preschool to the senior high school level. You know, he says he agrees with it. And you see, that is the crux of the matter. It is recognized and being urged upon us by the 1992 Constitution that we must give basic school education free, we must progressively provide secondary education free. It's a constitutional requirement. You see, so really, that settles the matter. This business about quality. It's an insult, and this one is the proper insult.
Why is that an insult? Quality is an important ingredient.
John Mahama, the president, had said that somebody is insulting Northerners by proposing to give them social housing. It is this business, of course, that is rather an insult. Because as we speak, our brothers and sisters in the North are entitled to free education. If you say that free isn't quality, what you are saying is that the products of the free education, our brothers and sisters from the North, have gotten inferior education. And that is where the insult is. You see this NDC advert running, they've got some Ghana people on the beach, and it was small free education. Why don't they use our brothers and sisters from the North? Because it is they who have experienced or enjoyed free education. Let's put them on the TV and let them tell us that yes, they enjoyed it and they realize that it's inferior. It is potogum. You go and put Ghana people. Have they enjoyed free education? Look at these people. Total mischief, running totally amok because of the brilliance of the idea. And you don't find a good idea. You don't. Sakara, a lot of people say that Sakara did best on the debate. Sakara, by his own admission on the night, said that he's a product of free education. John Mahama neglected to mention that. Sakara boldly admitted that he is a product of free education. And then you telling her that there's no quality? Can you imagine? Now, the basis of this policy that Nana Akufo-Addo is determined to bring is that education offers us the biggest tool to lift people out of poverty. All of us are talking about how we can leverage our new oil income so that every Ghanaian would benefit. As we speak, even bread is imported onto the rigs. Bread. So it's been difficult leveraging the impact. Free education is one of the biggest ways that we can make sure every Ghanaian family benefits from our oil income. And you see, the proverb says, and we believe in it, that if you're planning for 1 year, plant corn. If you're planning for 10 years, plant trees. If you're planning for a lifetime, educate the people. We believe in that. We believe that the situation that we have today, where at the end of basic school, 150,000 Ghanaian children on the average fall out, cannot be tolerated. And you see, this argument even goes to the middle class, who may imagine that they can afford fees for their children and so may not necessarily benefit from free secondary school. It is in their own interest that the rest of society is lifted up. If you're a middle class person and you are living in your mansion with your iron gates and all of that, and you have these huge numbers being thrown out of school with nothing, there will be a threat to you, to your own security, and to your own livelihood. So it's in the interest of everybody, the whole society, the middle class, the poor families, that we hold each other and lift ourselves up. And education is one of the means that we can do that. They talk about cost. We have said that the additional cost of providing free secondary school every year, it's about 1.3, 1.4% of GDP. The additional cost. It is not much. In 2010, we spent 640 million Ghana cedis paying judgment debts. That was about 1.4% of our GDP in 2010. Now, if as a country we can decide and actually spend 1.4% of our GDP to pay judgment debts, a lot of which we are now gone back to the cost to claim for the cost to that the money is be paid back. If we can do that, how can we not spend the same 1.3, 1.4% to ensure that every Ghanaian child gets secondary school education? So we are totally convinced that it is necessary The time is now. The Constitution requires it. We would give vent to the Constitution. As we go around the country, thousands of ordinary Ghanaians who come to us are enchanted with the free secondary school promise. You can see it in their faces. We will not fail them. We would give it to them. They deserve it, and it's their right, and we'll give it to them. We will not be swayed by people who imagine that there will be some political cost, and so they have to fight it. You don't fight a good idea. If I were the NDC, Felix and his collaborators, we would have pounced on it and taken it over, just like they tried to do with the concept of the Nothing Development Fund, where they quickly then, when we brought the Nothing Development Fund, John Mahama, the president, he said, we should take the money to go and pay the TOR debts. That what we're doing is pie in the sky. It cannot be done. If we have money to do nothing, why haven't we paid the TOR debts? And today, he can never mention a single sentence without talking about the SADA. So that's what they should have done. They should have said, hey, this is a good idea, but actually we're also going to implement it. And we are in power, we implement it this year. But you are fighting it. And it gets worse, it gets funny, it gets comical. And that's what is happening to the NDC. The people of Ghana deserve it. The poor people deserve it. We would give it to them.
When your own former education minister comes out to say that it will be tough, and you tie that in with comments that are being made by other pundits that it will be tough to do all that you promise now and still achieve the results that you are hoping to achieve, as you tell us the benefits of free education. Doesn't that undercut that free education argument?
It doesn't at all. Like I've said, that's also uncommon. I mean, all of us know that it will not be easy, but we've shown you how we are going to do it. We have shown you the sources of funds. We have shown you the impact on our GDP. We have done comparisons, and we have demonstrated that it can be done. It will not break the bank. That will take monies from GNPC. They're getting about $400 million a year. We said we'll take half of it. The money from the oil that is going into the budget, we'll take 60% of it. And we also have Get Fund. So we've shown you the sources of finance. We've shown you the program over the 4-year period. The costing, we will spend 78 on the free for the first year, the first term. We would spend 288 for the second year, because the second year you have all the 3 terms, second term, third term, and first term. We will spend 578 or something in the third year, and it will go up to 775 for the fees. And then we'll be spending 677 on the infrastructure. We've given you all this detail. We've done the comparison to GDP, we've done the comparison to the budget, and we've shown that it can be done. If somebody says it is not a pie in the sky, we know. That's why we've taken our time. We're going to build 350 new secondary schools over the period. They have said that we copied it from them. We launched the free secondary school at the Ghana International Press Center 2-3 weeks before the NDC launched their manifesto in Ho. And when we launched it, we talked about the 350 new secondary schools. And yet John Mahama is able to tell us that we are copying them. You don't understand this thing.
Godwin, quickly, and then let me go.
Sorry, we can always come back to it.
Godwin. Has the NDC's, has the MPP's argument been undercut?
Well, I would want to look at it from this perspective. I mean, when the average parent or guardian wants to have his child or ward educated, what is the first item that the person will have his or her mind on? I believe the first item will be the quality of the education that you want to get. It is a natural aspect of human nature to pursue quality. Now, if you read what Pastor Odapil has said, at least in the tape, generally, everybody would want to do things for himself if he has the means. So parents would want to educate their children to the best that they can if they have the means and they have the resources. To me, it will even be an inefficient allocation of societal resources to give things free to those who are in a position to afford them. But at the same time, we also need to recognize that there are individuals and groups who, for one reason or the other, are not in a position to personally meet their needs. Society has a moral obligation to assist them. Now, education can be looked at as any other service. It can be looked at as any other goods. And then say that parents and guardians primarily have a responsibility to educate their children and what. But the state comes in when we can identify those members of our society who are incapable of providing their own education. But aside of that, if you look at the Constitution itself, both in Article 21, I'm right, Article 25, and then you also look at Article 38. Article 25, 1, Clause 1 says, and I quote, all persons shall have the right to equal educational opportunities and facilities, and with a view to achieving the full realization of that right, basic education shall be free, compulsory, and available to all. Then you move downwards, it talks about secondary education, and the language is different from the previous language when it was talking about basic education. And it says, secondary education in its different forms, including technical and vocational education, shall be made generally available and accessible to all by every appropriate means, and in particular by the progressive introduction of free education. Now, when you go to Article 38, educational objectives, it says that the state shall provide educational facilities at all levels and in all regions of Ghana, and shall, to the greatest extent feasible, make those facilities available to all. When it comes to secondary education, it says that equal and balanced access to secondary and other appropriate pre-university education. The point of this, in the context of the current debate, is simple. Education is one of the general goods that everybody in the society needs. Up to a certain level, the state must, of necessity, make every aspect of it free, and that is the basic level. Now, what are the items that we are looking at? Are we looking at the schools? As our parents and guardians being called upon to contribute to constructing schools for students at the basic level? The Constitution says no. That must be borne by the state. When it comes to teachers, the states must bear the full cost of training teachers, making them available in the classroom, and keeping them in the classroom. Other teaching aids, books, and other matters, the states must make those available. Now, the question is, if we want to redefine basic education to mean extending it beyond the junior secondary level to the senior secondary level, are we going to do that in tandem with what the Constitution requires to be done at the basic level? That is to say, constructing the classrooms, putting the teachers there, making books and all other things available free. Now, there are those who say that we live in a world in which the resources are scarce, and that is a fact. That fact imposes a constraint on the things that we can do. And in that context, you have no choice but to prioritize. And when it comes to prioritization, you look at the basic items, the urgent ones, those that you cannot postpone, and then attend to them first and postpone those that you can. There are some who believe that basic education is such a basic social good that it assumes the status of an urgent social need. We must first ensure that every single individual who has need for it gets it. So it must become universal, and it must become compulsory as well. When you have achieved that objective, then you can look up to the higher level. These are legitimate arguments that we can accept, and then ask ourselves, as we speak today, how many of our citizens who need basic education have it and have access to it? I think they are telling us that there are still schools that are being conducted under trees. And every year when the statistics come about students who fail, I think they are normally telling us that the junior secondary school level, a particular school has got 0. These are matters that border on quality. You have situations in which you have one national service person who is the head teacher, who is the mathematics teacher, who is the English teacher, who is the science teacher, who is the social studies teacher. You have situations in which one person is taking the whole school at the basic level. We need to be told how much of the resources that we have now will be used to eradicate these deficiencies. How much will be left to be used for the senior secondary school level. It is not a question of whether free is good or free is bad. But what I can say is that naturally, people will look out for quality. And normally they use the North as an example. Let me use my own personal example. I'm from the North.
Okay.
I had my education up to the O level in the North. In 1989, I enrolled at the Bolgatanga Secondary School, which was, then enjoy free education. In 1990, my parents removed me from Bolgatanga Secondary School to Notre Dame Minor Seminary Secondary School, a mission school in Abrongo, where they were paying fees. Certainly, they were not chasing after free education. And there were many, many others. From Notre Dame to Navrongo Secondary School, it's within the walking distance. But when I finished my O-level, I had to come down to Presec. Navrongo was a free school, but Presec we had to pay. There were many of my colleagues who had to come down in search of schools that they believed provided quality education. You see, you simply have to go to those public schools and then find out, whenever you conduct the exam, how many of them qualify to move to the next stage. You will obviously have people who manage to qualify. And it will not be fair to the debate for us to look at the few who manage to qualify and then use them as an example of what the situation is. If you use the president as an example, he came from a very privileged family. And I believe he had his basic education in schools that were good. So when he moved to the secondary school in the North, he already had acquired a basic capacity that could allow him to progress. We cannot be using those people. There are many, many people who fail to move from the ordinary level to the advanced level, and from the advanced level to the secondary level because of the quality. So this is the context in which we should look at it.
I've just got a minute to wrap up, John. I'm tempted to ask you this, quick follow-up question. You were citing yourself as an example. I think it's fair game to speak to that same example. So your basic education before your parents elected to move you to the other school was free, right?
Yes.
If you didn't have that...
There was basic education that was free, but I attended a basic school that I had to pay.
Okay. Yours was paid for?
Yes.
I see. Then my question falls flat on it.
Go ahead.
Okay. And your secondary school was free?
My secondary school, I went to a school that we had to pay. Notre Dame Minor Seminary.
Secondary School.
And then his parents elected to
I
move
went to
him
the
Notre
Bolgatanga
Dame.
Secondary School, which was free. Then the second year, I was taken on transfer to the Notre Dame Minor Seminary School.
And the reason was that the quality was poor?
The quality was poor.
Which was a private school?
It was a mission school.
Was it private or public?
Well, in this context, you can say that it was private. It was private.
So the reason was that the quality was poor?
The reason was quality.
Okay.
And that's, it is not peculiar to the North. Every public school, even in the South and wherever, you have those things. So you have people moving from the North, coming to Adisadel College, going to St. Augustine, coming to Presec, going to St. Hubert's, all in search of quality. So I think that it doesn't matter which side of the political debate the point may fall. But what matters is, what really do we care? If I teach in a university, and you will have
Sorry to interrupt you. What you're saying therefore is that quality is a paramount consideration.
Exactly.
Now, in the conversation you've had so far about what the NDC is saying, about what the MPP is saying, has either of them been able to give you a plan? I'm not saying who's criticizing quality, but a plan that addresses quality in a manner that convinces you?
Well, let me put it this way. What I have heard some of them say, particularly the NDC, is that they are going to put up 200
junior high schools.
Junior high school, secondary schools across the country. What problem is that supposed to solve? I mean, you have to have schools for people to go. How about teachers? Do you get the point? The problem of teachers.
And the NPP says they're going to build 350, but again, that will suffer the same thing.
The same
so what you're saying is that neither of them has been able to comprehensively answer the quality question for you.
For me, I mean, the teacher is number one. Any other thing is number two.
No, but just a quick question.
Okay.
Just something down.
You're also doing a rebuttal at this
No,
stage.
I'm just asking you a question.
Yeah.
When you were moved from Bogatanga Secondary School to
Notre Dame, yes, that's correct.
And you say that the quality at Notre Dame was better
far,
than Boga.
exactly.
Yes, but the quality at Notre Dame was higher, not because Boga was free. You understand what I'm saying?
Well,
I mean, if you take a crowd, people will move their children from, say, Odogon or secondary school to Akosombo Secondary School, which is paying, or to SOS Tema, which is paying. But the quality at Odogon or secondary school or Laboni is not the same as SOS, not because it is free. It's just because it's better endowed. The investment there, it's much better.
Yes, and
because even with the public secondary schools, there are differences.
I agree with you.
I mean, you wouldn't compare.
Just a
you wouldn't compare Chibota and
I agree with you. But the point, though, is that comparing the two, because I've had the experience of the two, I mean, because parents had to make some contribution, and to the extent that they had to make those contributions, that extent didn't make it free. Then those facilities that we needed were made available.
But you see, the question too is
I have to go to Kweku. I'll come to you to deal with it.
I have to go to
my
last point.
I'm sorry, I have to go to Kweku. No, Chief. I'll come back to you. Let me go to Kweku.
The point you need to consider, Kojo, is that how many parents will be able to take their children from Bolga to Notre Dame? That is the bigger issue that we want to deal with.
Kweku, let me hear your submission. So I'll come to Felix and
Well, very interesting points being made here. But I haven't checked, but I am told, and indeed I heard this friend of my lawyer, Kwame Akufu, making a case on this Northern Scholarship Scheme. I'm told if you go to the Auditor General's report, 2006, page 5 and 6, you would realize that the Auditor General made an observation to the effect that this Northern Scholarship Scheme actually is more or less being abused or not being effectively implemented or utilized. Because the truth of the matter is that it appears the essence of that policy, the scheme, is that any Northerner, anywhere in this country, is entitled to that scholarship. Not just those who are geographically restricted to the northern region. It doesn't appear as if that is being done properly. He made some critical observations on that. But I'm also told that significantly, then Vice President Mahama, in an encounter with the Wangara chief somewhere in Kumasi or so, if you read the chronicle of May 19th, 2009, actually emphasized this point to the Wangara chief, that Northerners across the length and breadth of this country, wherever you are, wherever you want to go to school, if it's in the public sector, you are entitled to that scholarship.
We'll have to check. I don't know. We'll have to
Yes,
check
that's why I said
yeah.
I have heard. I haven't double checked. But you see, I found something interesting here. If you look into the report of the Constitution Review Commission, the section on the North and South developmental gap, they made some very interesting observation in G. It says the cancellation, they were asking for the National Development Plan should include strategies that aim at, E is of relevance to me here, the cancellation of the policy of free education in northern Ghana because it is discriminatory. Now, my view is this: instead of proceeding to recommend cancellation of the policy because it's discriminatory, I think it's rather expanding it to include others who are not enjoying it. I go for equity in that sense. So I have a difficulty with those who think that an attempt to redefine basic education to include senior high secondary school and then proceed on that basis to make it free is a mission impossible. I have a difficulty with that. Of course, purely on ideological grounds, and if you like, even sentimental. I think it's a project that is possible and practicable based on the quality of leadership, the courage of conviction. And as I've said, this debate is almost endless, and it's for the electorate to determine the choice they want to make. Nobody can impose or decree a choice for anybody.
People have to make their choice at
That's
the end.
all. And so it is how you go out there to sell the project, the proposal, and how convincing you are. So I'm really...
In the midst of that, Kweku,
Yeah.
in the midst of that, the question of quality has been accepted by everybody as a key question.
Look,
the
I've
question I
said
was
it.
asking Godwin is that, do you get a clear answer, even from those who are criticizing it, on how they will better address the question of quality?
All of them have made some proposals and prescriptions. But I have said here, I do not see a Chinese war between access, affordability, and quality. What we want is accessible, affordable, quality education. It is how you conceive it, the kind of program you put in place, and how you execute it. I cannot imagine that people are telling us that it's access first before affordability or before quality. They are organically linked. So it is how, the concept, how do you first conceive it? When you conceive it properly and know all the dynamics involved, then what kind of program have you put in place? What team is going to execute that? This doesn't come easily, and that's perhaps informs what Papa Usu Nkrumah was saying. It's a Herculean task. There's no doubt about it. I'm not sure anybody was talking about an easy thing. Independence, the struggle for independence was not easy. Some said now, some said within the shortest possible time. And when we said now, we didn't mean that the next day. That's not what we meant, okay? And we had it within a space time of about 9 years. But you have to start the implementation with some courage and boldness. I have stated my case. I am for the free SHS policy. But there are others who are not for it. That's democracy. Let those who are for it go out there, sell it, convince people, get the vote. Because you see, if you don't get power, you cannot effect social change.
You made that point, I think, last week.
Now let me deal with the Ota bill thing, because I think it's part of this matter.
It is.
See, you see, let's be just frank with ourselves. This thing has two sides. The first side is the obvious propaganda mischief that some people sought to play with the Ota bill tape. That is so manifestly clear, we should expose it. Look, why should it take Asidu Nketia 10, 11 years to commend Ota bill for a statement that he's supposed to have made? Have you heard the propaganda jingle by a group called Education Watch that has been putting out commercials in favor of the ruling party? And that this particular Ota bill tape, they've captured the voice and it's part of that jingle. So 10 years down the line, the General Secretary of the ruling party finds it necessary to congratulate Ota bill because, according to him, Ota bill had vindicated their case on free education. The timing clearly, the time of the particular event, we were told, some of the newspapers said live-line seminar over the weekend. That's how they painted it. So others followed it and made it look new. They bring in J.H. Mensah, they bring in Papa Usu Nkrumah, and they put the thread together. It shows the potency of that whole free education agenda. The fact that it has become the front burner and the weight, the potency of it is making some people now engage in mischief that, to me, is avoidable and very, very unethical. So that is clear. That aspect should be told. That story should be told. Some people deliberately released the tape at this time within the context of election 2012 campaign to play mischief with it. And it's failed. It's collapsed. But having said that, the thing that the man said, the reverend, is it the pastor, said, ought to also be subjected to interrogation. Look, I do not agree with and he's one of those I respect a lot when it comes to power of oratory and some wisdom and things. I listen to him quite a lot for many years now. But for once, the things he said are not sustainable. Taxes, because our taxes are used for, that will be used to pay the bill for free education. What does that mean? It means that it is not free. And if it is free, then it is cheap. It lacks quality. And that if the state funds it, then the state will end up making the parents and the children property of the state. And so they will disrespect their parents. These are fallacies. They are unsustainable. You can't put this out there and ask people to believe it. So indeed, the substance itself of the things that the good pastor said, and I'm told, maybe I should be a bit charitable, that he was talking of tertiary education and not basic education. Because you realize that significantly, the statement that was issued by his rep, there is an indication of his commitment to free basic university education. So that might appear to be a contradiction if you take the superficial level of what he was saying, that I don't believe in free education. It's here. I don't want free education. I'm quoting. I don't believe in free education. I say pay me well my due and let me have the joy of paying my own child's school fees so that my child is not a property of the state. He's my own child and I have the dignity of a father to pay for my own child. When my child grows up, I will say, I paid your fees. This is full of fallacies. Let's be fair. Let's be blunt. And yet, this was taken on by some people to push the fact that he had vindicated their stand. It's just because those people were proceeding from a position of mischief. Crude mischief. So let's put the Otabil thing in the appropriate context. Look, if I pay taxes, and I pay my child's school fees, that's double taxation, if you like. If I pay taxes and the state decides that because I'm paying taxes, I'll use part of the taxes that everybody is paying to fund my child's school fees. So I'm not paying my child's school fees. There's a lessening of the burden there. Common sense. So what are we talking about? And how does the child become the property of the state because the state is funding the child's school fees? And how is it possible that the child will not have respect? The parents, do they pay only school fees? Is parental responsibility restricted to only school fees, payment of school fees? So many other things come on board, which would ensure that your child would know that, yes, this is my father, this is my mother, these are my parents. So again, there's a huge gap there.
In a minute and a half, as you wrap up for me, has the NPP's, throttle on this free education campaign suffered any shocks as a result of these things that you call mischief?
Oh, but indeed, that's why I said all this shows the potency of that agenda. Not necessarily reflecting how those people may competently execute the assignment.
But the agenda in
assuming
itself.
They got the power. But rather, I'm saying this is knee-jerk reactions to the potency. That's what it means. So now instead of sitting down and interrogating the thing and deal with it well, well, you don't need the assistance of mischief to deal with an issue of this sort. There's a lot in arsenal there. This is not practicable. Show why it's not practicable. There isn't a much resource, we don't have too many resources or enough capital to finance it. Show it. You don't go for a tape that is 10 years old. Make it look as if it's of current mode. Push it out there, get a general secretary to come and congratulate somebody indeed they had always been attacking. This is mischief.
Okay.
Raw, crude mischief.
28 after 11. I'm going to come to Felix and Anakumia. Before I do that, my producer informs me that lawyer Kwame Akufo has some quick intervention on the legality of the Northern Education Scholarship Program. Mr. Akufo, are you on the line?
I am on the line. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Very quickly, let me hear you.
Yeah, well, I heard Mr. Kokubako making a point on the Northern Scholarship Scheme. I'm not complaining about the legality. What I was saying was that it is a matter of fact that the Northern Extract Award Scheme allows all Northerners living in the Northern region to have free secondary school education. It also allows every Northerner living in any part of Ghana to have access to free secondary school education. What it means basically is that President Mahama's son, if he chose to go to a Timoteo school, will be able to access the scholarship. The President of the Republic, His Excellency President John Mahama, in May 2009, confirmed the Northern Extra Scholarship Scheme to the Wangara community in Kumasi. The story is captured in the Chronicle of 13th May 2009. In which the President tells his fellow Northerners and his brethren that the Northern Scholarship Scheme is open to each and every Northerner, irrespective of where you live in the country. If it is possible to educate Northerners, irrespective of wherever they live in this republic of ours, then it is possible to educate the Fancy child, to educate the Akan child, to educate the Ewe child, everywhere in this country.
Okay.
So the Auditor General's report confirms that, the President confirms it, the Scholarship Secretariat policy is exactly on that point.
I hear
nothing more to add.
I hear you. I get the drift of your argument. So we've just gone past 30 minutes after 11. This is Newsfile. Felix and Anakumi are here. My director instructs me to take a quick break and then to come to you. Sorry to break your flow, but I need to do that. Frimpong from London sends us an email. He says, assuming without admitting that Pastor Otabel's tape is true, can't the NDC realize that the pastor is even shooting down their education policy as well? Could you please look at this? The NDC is saying that they are not against free SHS, but that the time isn't right. But if you listen to the tape, the pastor is saying that free things lack quality. He also says that when free education is given to children, parents can't have control over their children. He doesn't exactly say that, though. Says, so if the NDC are saying they will make education progressively free, what the tape is saying implies that Pastor Otabel is against their policy. We'll go for a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Newsfile. I'll quickly go to Felix and then I'll come to
thank you very much. I mean, quickly on the Pastor Mensah Otabel tip. Again, I fail to see the mischief that Kweku is speaking about. We were here when newspapers and some media outlets said that they had in their position a voice of Dr. Mensah Otabel making some intervention on education. And indeed, if you listen to the content of that tip, it was manifest that Pastor Mensah Otabel was taking a position against free education. His words were clear. Among other things, he said that education can never be free. That was a categorical statement. He also questioned the quality of any education that is said to be free. So it was clear. Whether the tape or whether this statement was made yesterday or 10 years ago, for me, is immaterial. It is the content and the relevance of the content that matters. In fact, it is precisely because this was not done within a political context. In other words, he was not speaking in the heat of this current debate that makes it more potent. He was expressing a view that he believed in 10 years ago, if what is coming out now is to be believed. Now, what he's saying, is it true or is it not true? I don't entirely agree with everything that he said. But certainly, the issue of quality that he raises is relevant. Why? The Bible was written 2,000 years ago. Can anybody argue that the contents of the Bible are no longer relevant?
Oh, scripture
indeed,
different from
no, indeed, Mr. Pastor Mensah Otabel himself titles his sermons the living word. And what he says there is relevant to the extent that it exposes a certain inherent flaw in the MPP argument. And if our General Secretary believes that it coincides with the position that we've taken, and therefore he commends Dr. Mensah Otabel for having spoken the truth, I don't see
apparent for making a current statement.
No,
that's
but,
why he said.
but if General Mosquito was under the impression that this thing was said recently, and on that basis he proceeds to make a comment and congratulates Pastor Mensah Otabel, how can you fault him? It was subsequent to that we got a statement from the church indicating that it was said several years ago. But I even have a difficulty with the statement that was issued. I think that this statement was not required, really, because it complicates the matter for Pastor Mensah Otabel. When Pastor Mensah Otabel said that education can never be free, and that was a categorical statement, the Constitution existed. The Constitution has stipulated that there should be free, compulsory, universal basic education. So he knew about the constitutional provision and yet said that education can never be free. So this actually creates a certain problem for him in terms of his image as a revered man of God. Now, when Pastor Mensah Otabel speaks now, must we take it to represent his views, or should we wait later and see if there will be a clarification? I think that this statement does not help his case. He should have stuck to his guns and defended the position, because honestly, there's nothing wrong with believing that education can never be free, to the extent that you are able to advance arguments to support it. Having said that, let me come to the subject of education. Listen, contrary to Kweku.
Just want to finish with this one.
Go ahead.
Before. So, is it the NDC's position that the earlier tape, minus this reaction in which the doctor says that education can never be free, quality will be compromised, is the right position?
No, the NDC has not said that education can never be free. Within the context of the current debate, we have stated that it is not the time yet to implement free senior high school education. I'll come to that and explain why we've taken that position. No. It is a quality. Listen. It is a quality bit. The fact that
what quality?
Oh, Pastor Mensah Otabel speaks about quality.
And my question really is that in that tape, he says, if it's free, you must question the quality.
Absolutely.
But the NDC has also said that it doesn't disagree with, the progressively free concept.
Absolutely. That's why I've told you that we do not hold that education can never be free. Of course, it is a valid argument for him to make that essentially you can't say anything is free because it will be funded with taxpayers' money. That is a valid point. I don't think anybody can contest it.
No, I'm talking about the free and quality contrast.
Yeah,
because
if you
also believe in free at the end of the day, then like one of my listeners sent in a text, his comments will
but
then
we have not
undercut
said
your
that
argument
this
as well.
comment entirely vindicates our position. It may coincide with aspects of the position that we have espoused. Let me move on to the free education bit. For me, it is nothing short of a vote-buying gimmick. That free SHS policy. It does not make sense one bit in light of the challenges we have with our educational system. Indeed, at the IEA debate, you read out the gaps in funding for education. If you go back to those figures that you provided, you find that the funding gap is bigger at the primary, the technical and vocational, and at the tertiary level than it is at the senior high school level. What that means is that the most urgent need that we have in our educational setup is to strengthen the basic, the technical and vocational and tertiary levels. Therefore, when a party hives off just one aspect of our educational system and says that I am going to make it free, when they are unable to tell us in clear, unmistakable terms exactly what problem that is addressed, there's a difficulty. Why? When you make senior high school education free, the graduates that come up, would they possess the sort of human resource that you need immediately to ensure rapid socio-economic development? Are you going to produce pilots, doctors, nurses, engineers, aeronautical engineers at the senior high school level? No. You will come up with people who have general arts, science, business backgrounds, and who will need to progress in order to possess the skill that is required to be able to contribute effectively to national development. At the very most, you will at the best, I should say, you will have people who are literate and numerate. But you can even achieve literacy and numeracy at the basic level if you have quality education there. Now, there are 5 million pupils in basic education. In public schools, the quality is horrendous. And that is highlighted by a clip that I watched on Multi TV yesterday. A child was asked somewhere in the Adan area what school she attends. You know her answer? I'm in class 3. She did not understand the English that your reporter was asking her. And yet the young people is saying that we should ignore this patent problem, this serious problem, and invest all of our resources in just senior high school.
Is that what they've said?
But that's what they've said. What plans do they have for basic education? Otherwise, why should you say that we should pour all our oil revenue?
You're creating your own distortion.
No, I'm not creating any distortion. I'm saying that, listen, I'm saying that the MPP has not been able to tell us what problem-free senior high school education addresses.
They have explained that deals with the problem of access, and
it does not.
Well,
let me make this quickly. No,
quickly. I'll come to you. I will come to you. No. They have explained access and fair things, but you see, this is my question. Felix, this is my question. You are saying that quality is a major thing and it's not being addressed in their free SHS program. What's your answer to quality?
First of all, when we speak about quality, what essentially are we talking about? We are talking about creating the environment that makes it possible for effective teaching and learning to take place. Now, if pupils are sitting under trees, if they are lying on their bellies, if they are going to school in tattered uniforms, if they do not have access to exercise books, they don't have textbooks, they don't have supplementary readers, if teachers are poorly paid, you cannot guarantee quality. Again,
I can go to school under tree free, can't I?
No. Currently, you can't even go there free. Because essentially, when we speak about free, and let me correct this distortion that the NPP creates. They say that there's...
Hold it. Let me understand your answer.
I'm saying that...
You are saying that your answer to quality is
to create the environment that ensures that effective teaching and learning...
And the ingredients therein are...
Fine. If people don't have classrooms to sit in, we will give them classrooms.
So taking out the schools and the trees...
Exactly. If they don't have learning aids, we are going to provide that. Now, teacher remuneration, we have done something about it. And if there's opportunity to do more, we will do. Having done that, then we will turn attention to ensuring that at the senior high school level, we make it possible for anybody who is qualified to go to school to attend senior high school. That's what we are saying, because even the Constitution says that we should make basic school education free. If we have not made basic school education free, not 20 years, the Constitution actually said 10 years. The NPP was in power when the 10-year period elapsed. But, I mean, it makes sense.
Within.
Listen. But in 2005, yes, in 2005.
That was a failure.
No, exactly. But why did that failure arise? Because there was a lack of resources. There was a lack of resources to immediately implement that.
We're wasting resources, chop corruption, everything. We're doing all those things. We're chopping money.
The people could not do it. And it's understandable. Nobody can hold their truth for not doing it because the resources were simply not available. Now, if you have resources, what do? You go to the basic level, which is a basic fundamental requirement Make that place free. When you finish and you have additional resources, there are people who don't go to senior high school, not because their parents could not afford, but because they first don't even qualify to enter senior high school.
But there are those
when
who
you meet those children on the streets who are not in school, ask them what their grades were. Because of the poor, horrendous quality at the basic level, some of them have aggregate 40. That won't qualify them to enter any senior high school. Therefore, if we build 200 community senior high schools, people with aggregate 40 would qualify. Let them go in. When they go in, there's an element of fee paying that parents have to bear a certain burden. So what can we do to alleviate that plight? We make sure that subsidies that must go there are increased. If it is some subvention that has to be paid, it will be paid. If we have to absorb utilities, we do so. If we have to give them exercises or textbooks, we do so. But certainly parents will make a certain contribution within the foreseeable future until such time that we have adequate resources to ensure that it is entirely free. Then we move on to tertiary education. But the NPP is not addressing these problems. All they are doing is that they know that certainly paying fees is not the most interesting thing for parents to do. So when you say it is free, people will buy it. That's where Kweku says it is potent. It's not patent. It is not potent. It's only deception. You are throwing alluring promises at people just so that they will vote for you. When you come into power, you will not be able to do it. So Kojo, the point that must be made is that the NDC,
one-time premium deception.
The NDC is not in principle against making anything free. But we believe that as a country with limited resources, we need to invest in the areas that are most critical. Okay. And in our view, basic education, which has about 8 times more people than senior high school, is a place to invest now.
Emmanuel from Ho says what the Constitution means by free education is that education should not be limited to only those who are mentally capable or those who can afford it, but should be accessible to underprivileged and mentally challenged, and the infrastructure in terms of architectural design also be made available. I have a text that doesn't bear name. It says, I believe quality will come when access is created, reducing the impediment of cost and affordability. I went to JHS with one teacher and A-level service personnel each year in 1992, many at times with torn uniform and sometimes without chaliwate. Thank God I now have a master's degree. We can give Nana and free education a chance. Nana Kumia.
When you listen to the NDC, you can feel the turmoil, the weight that they are suffering because they are opposing a good idea. Let me just digress a little. These social housing hostels that has been proposed for Kayaye, so-called Kayaye. John Mahama, the president, first he says it's not good. Then he says that they should be built in the north. Who told John Mahama that the migration of 14, 15-year-olds from the north to the south is because they don't have accommodation in the north? It is because they couldn't progress after basic school. And their parents could not afford to take them anywhere. That is why they've left their homes hundreds of kilometers away to come and sleep in Adabraka and Kaneshi. And if this is the situation and we are going to provide some accommodation for them, you say, no, we should build it in the north. We should train them and build machines. When you give them machines, sewing machines, where would they keep the machines? On the streets? It's the same thing with this education. When the NDC, Felix is asking, what is the problem free education will solve? When you give the free uniform, what is it going to solve?
Addressing the issue of quality.
When you give the exercise books, free exercise books, have parents told you they can't afford exercise books? When you give the free computers, have parents told you they can't afford to buy computers? But you see, Kojo, let me address the issue of quality directly. Okay, everybody is saying what they like. Let me address it directly by giving you the facts. Kojo, results of BEC. 2001, 60% pass. 2002, 60% pass. 2003, 60% pass. 2004, 61% pass. 2005, 61% pass. 2006, 61. 2007, 61. 2008, 62. Consistently, results of BEC passes above 60% from 2001 to 2008. Now listen to what happens. 2009, first year of NDC, it falls from 62% pass to 50.
Not true.
2010, second year of NDC, it falls to 49. 2011, it falls to 46. 2012, they say now it's 99.5%. So in terms of quality, this is the BEC, the secondary school level, consistently, the policy of the NPP to make senior secondary school 4 years have produced the best results over the 3-year period. So in terms of the practical results, The NPP record, as far as quality in the basic school, in the secondary school, is there for everybody to see. You can never do any amount of propaganda to twist this facts.
If you allow me.
Now,
I need to
please.
Okay.
No, but I didn't interrupt you.
Oh, no, fine. I thought that you had finished. That's fine.
Now,
sorry.
Senior primary school, it should be free. It says within 10 years. Within 10 years, from 1993 to 2002. That's what the Constitution says. Out of those 10 years, NDC had 8 years. NPP had 2. We implemented it. They couldn't implement it. It's talking about...
No, again, you didn't implement free education. Please, these lies must stop. Basic education in Ghana is not free.
Can I finish?
Why do you continue to lie to the people of this country?
It's talking about where are the resources. You found resources to pay judgment debts.
And you never pay judgment debts when you were in power. No, you never pay judgment debts when you were in power.
No, I mean, we all listen to him quietly.
I cannot believe all the things that you say.
Now,
you never pay judgment debts when you were in power.
Now, if you've paid judgment debts, justifiably, why are you in court?
So because of one instance,
wasting our money,
never be paid. Is that the argument you're making? You will never pay judgment debts when you come to power.
He doesn't want the truth to come out.
I mean, what truth is that?
If you've paid...
Now you're heckling.
The question is very simple. If you've paid judgment debts and you say you are justified and it's normal, why are you in courts asking the courts to give you back the money?
In one
instance.
Well,
yes. That is the only for now.
To get there. Whatever is
no one.
For now it's one.
It's one.
For now it is one.
Giving CP tax.
Look, if we have time,
one judgment debt.
Let's hear one person. Let's hear one person. Let's hear one person.
If we had time, Kojo, I will take you through the sequence of payments, judgment that you will cry. I'm telling you, these people, what they've done to this, total disaster. Total disaster. But we don't have time, and we're not talking about judgment debt. So it is a political choice. You chose what you use the money for. We have told the people of Ghana what we will use the money for. If they give us the mandate, we will use it for just that. Now, this business about the primary school, the capitation grant was introduced by the NPP. Primary school is free. The teachers, hold on. The teachers find a way of bringing in some charges. They will say typing fees, they will say computer fees, and so on. Capitation grant was brought in to absorb those fees. If people are still paying, it's because the teachers have increased, and you people haven't increased the capitation grant to mop up the increments. And you have to standardize the fees. You can't have one school charging computer fees and another school charging hockey fees, as is what's happening now. But it was brought in, capitation grant was brought in to mop up these little fees. But essentially, it is free. Increase the capitation grant. The whole of this year, these people have been not diligent in paying the capitation grant. As fellas, they haven't paid.
And in your period,
you
paid capitation grant.
But you find money.
There were times that you hadn't paid capitation grant.
Let me just run that because Felix doesn't want the truth. You see, now as they can't pay capitation grants so people can go to primary schools, they are using monies to build state-of-the-art billboards across the country. As we speak, factories in Tema are closing down because there is no water. Industries are closing down. People are being thrown out of work because they can't have water. And the ruling government is spending its money on glossy advertising.
But there's no proof that that is being funded by state funds.
But you are the ruling government. If you can get money to do glossy adverts, you can't get money to fix our water. Kojo, your standards must be higher than that. This is the kind of government we are facing.
The way you are looking at Alakobi, you have some.
No, he's totally bemused.
Yes, he will be bemused.
He's bemused at the atrocities.
No, he will be bemused at the shocking level
at the atrocities.
I'm going to give everybody 1 minute to wrap up. I'm going to give everybody 1 minute to wrap up, and then we'll be left with.
Yeah, I beg you.
I give everybody the equal amount of time. I keep watching the time. I'll give everybody 1 minute to wrap up, and then we'll give.
Confounded at the atrocities that these people are inflicting.
God, let me give you 1 minute to wrap up.
They can't even provide water for our industries.
1 minute.
Yes, I think that the IEA debate was a good exercise, and we can replicate that and include the other political parties. Maybe, improve those shortcomings to make it a little bit more effective than it has been. Then also on education, I hope that the key stakeholders in education speak out. because we can't allow the politicians to speak of this very important matter. Listening to what they speak about.
I hear that because this is coming in the midst of an election period, you know, many people are reluctant to throw their hats.
But that is the more reason why we have to speak out, so that if you look at their positions, I mean, both parties are coming to the center in response to what people, I mean, the general public, I mean, is making. So it's very important for the teachers in particular, because they are the best persons to tell what type of situation that they need to speak.
The figures that Anakomia gave us, the number of students who passed BEC is false. In 2009, 62.4% of BEC candidates passed. In 2010, 78.95% passed. And in 2011, 58.44% passed. In 2012, 99.6% passed. That means that the measures that we introduced, the free school uniforms, the free exercise books, the laptops, the increase in the capitation grant, and the fixing of proper emoluments for teachers is kicking in. But let me make a final point, is that Ghanaians should not allow themselves to be deceived. No, we've not reduced it. We've not reduced it. In 2009,
the education minister was explaining to me how they got
that is for this year. But in 2009, contrary to the figure,
a changing in the grading.
Yes, but they have the right. They have the remedy to do.
Your own people.
Oh, please, please. No, but you put out false information about the pass rate. I've corrected it. There is a Ministry of Education document. This is a propaganda document that you have prepared. Yes. But the point I want to make.
Where's the Ministry of Education document? This one?
Yeah. Some responses to the issue.
This is the Ministry of Education.
Yeah, but it's a Ministry of Education document. They even go ahead to demolish.
Felix, wrap up for me. Felix, wrap up for me.
The point I want to make.
Felix, wrap up for me.
The point I want to make.
No, wait, you have your say.
Where is it?
You have your say. Felix, wrap up for me.
The point I want to make. The point
is a propaganda broadsheet.
The point I want to make is that the NPP's falsehood of free SHS has collapsed in the face of facts that are coming out. And that's why the likes of Dr. Mensah Otabil, the likes of Mr. J.H. Mensah, he made a point in 2007 and dismissed this whole propaganda about free education the NPP wants to bring about. We in the NDC are offering something superior. We are going to ensure that we abide by the constitutional provision of making basic school education free first, whilst improving quality and access.
You were heckling, so I'll give you 30 seconds.
No, they say that this is the Ministry of...
what is this? But it's a Ministry of Education response to the lies that you peddled on education. The document that you showed. Where did you
20 seconds.
What's the Ministry of Education?
20 seconds.
But I'll show you why it's coming from the Ministry of Education.
20 seconds.
You see, Felix is saying they got 99.5 because they've brought computers, they've paid teachers better. His own Minister of Education is saying that they've adjusted the...
I'm sorry, just 10 seconds to wrap up for me. Sign off for us.
The point about timing of the release of the Otabil being immaterial, I was surprised at that. You see, it is the deliberate attempt to situate it within the current debate, suggesting that it was done recently and that he was commenting on the education debate is what I mean by mischief.
But that was not
We've got to go. This Newsfile. Thank you for watching and listening. Have a good week.
Which education work? If some group finances, they are even doing an advert to counter a falsehood by the